What's going on, everyone? Stocks with Kenny here today. Hope you guys have had a great week. We're going into the weekend strong. Republican debates next week. Probably that's what's going to be my live stream for next week. I believe it's on the 25th. I think that's a Saturday, actually. Well, whatever that day comes, I'll be live streaming for that. The GOP results. Well, sorry, the GOP debates for 2024. So before I get into it, I want to do some housekeeping. So I have a Rumble account. I had this Rumble account about a couple months already before, and I just wanted to kind of have some parity between my social media accounts. So I have a Rumble account. If you guys want, you can join me if you have a Rumble account already. Pretty much is a mirror of everything that I do on YouTube, but maybe less censored. Obviously, I don't have to worry about copyrights. And appreciate you for coming in, Jonathan Fields. I'm doing well, just living the dream. Hope you're doing okay. I'm doing very well, actually. Appreciate the follow-up. So back to what I was saying. I also have a Locals account. Locals is going to be like my membership subscription service type of thing. So instead of a YouTube membership, Locals is going to be my membership stuff. So if I have like exclusive content, I'll put it here. If I have announcements, maybe sneak peeks or something like that, it pretty much give you guys more personal access to me. So if you guys want, you can join my Locals account. And I'm going to try to put some content in there. One of the things I was thinking about putting content for, and Jonathan Fields probably will like this, is just more of my personal opinions about things, my personal thoughts. And it's not only going to be exclusively on Locals. Eventually, I'll start porting some of the exclusive stuff into YouTube. So even if you can't join my Locals, I'll still have that stuff available eventually on YouTube. So I want to end off this with also I have Twitter as well. So if you guys don't follow me on Twitter, I'm actually been trying to focus on it. I haven't been tweeting much. I think the last time I tweeted was almost a month ago, actually. So I haven't been on Twitter that active. I've been focusing primarily on YouTube. But I appreciate you guys if you want to give me a follow on Twitter, and I'll be motivated to tweet more. But hey, I digress. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Let's get into this interview with Tucker Carlson and Vivek Ramaswamy, two of my favorite people. I just finished reading Tucker Carlson's book, Ship of Fools, and my God, the commentary in there is God tier. So let's get into the video. Let's go, I guess.
The first Republican debate of the season is less than a week away. It's next Wednesday in Milwaukee. We have no idea what's going to happen there, of course. But one prediction we can confidently make is that a man called Vivek Ramaswamy is likely to make an impression, a political outsider with a complicated name who is unaccountably rising in the polls.
I agree with the complicated name. Oh my God. I remember when I was calling him Vivek, people were getting me hell in the comment section. But let's continue.
Who is this guy? Is he a BS artist? Is he for real? We just sat down with him for an hour and found him one of the best versed voices in policy we talked to in a long time. That was a surprise. This is a conversation worth watching. Here it is. Vivek, thanks for joining us.
It's good to be here.
So you, the other day, made a comment about 9/11 in which you suggested that the U.S. government had not been wholly forthcoming about what happened that day, that there had been lying by the federal bureaucracies. That seems obviously true. The response was unbelievable. It was immediate. You were attacked as a conspiracy monger, as a lunatic, but not just by the left, also by the goons at the Wall Street Journal editorial page, wrote a whole piece about how you disqualified yourself by even asking that question. What were you saying, and why was the reaction as fierce as it was, do you think?
It was fascinating, Tucker. I've had many of these moments in the campaign where they said, this is the campaign ender. This is over. He just blew it. This is one of them. So this is like the fourth or fifth of those.
Sorry, guys. I got to pause just to I wanted to give my thoughts on this. This idea that you can't be honest with people, it'll cost you. Like, this is the problem I have with politics. And this is one of the reasons why I like Vivek. I think Vivek is standing on principles. I believe he's maybe one of the most honest politicians or people running for office since, other than Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump started this, hey, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell people how it is. We need a wall, right? We need a big, beautiful wall, right? So Vivek I believe, is in that similar mode. Now, he may not be as bombastic or as charismatic as Trump, but I think he has deep principled convictions. And I think this is why he's gaining popularity in the polls. I just did a video like 2 days ago that Ron DeSantis fell to third place on a latest poll by RMG Research. And maybe this just might be a one-off, but Vivek is like almost becoming a rising star. So seeing this interview a week before, we get into the primary debates for the GOP, it's kind of give us a sense of like where Vivek is at right now. And I think that his popularity is only going to get even bigger, especially once after the debate. I think if I had to place a bet, I think I'll put my bets on Vivek doing extremely well on the GOP primary. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
But what was interesting about it was, right, this was not a left-wing chorus, right? This was mostly actually a right-leaning chorus. And Mike Pence, and he was deeply disappointed. Chris Murphy, this Democratic senator guy, says something very similar to Mike Pence. And so it's fascinating. It says there's something going on here. So in fairness, Tucker, I didn't suggest it. I explicitly said that the government absolutely lied to us. The 9/11 Commission lied. The FBI lied. Now, is this a core point of my campaign? No, it's not. I actually went on a comedy show where some guy asked me, was the moon landing fake? I said, I think it was real. Then he asked me, did the government tell us the truth about 9/11? I said, no, they did not. So in response to a question, I'm going to answer honestly.
Yeah.
And the thing I had in mind was the facts. There's this guy, al-Bayoumi. Now, rewind back to 9/11 and the pre-9/11 day. Think of how ludicrous this story is. A 42-year-old graduate student, and there's nothing wrong with being 42 and going back to school. My dad went back to school much later in life, but he's a 42-year-old graduate student who receives the two of the terrorists who flew planes into buildings in the United States of America not that long later, receives them at the airport in LA, takes them to his house, spends lots of time with them, integrates them into the community. But the account for what he said happened was he met them randomly at the airport. That doesn't make much sense on the face
Just kind of happened to be at LAX and
no, exactly.
You guys from
and
Saudi.
Hey, you look like guys we might get along with, and then suddenly become fast friends at the airport, so much so that he takes them up. So it's a little suspicious. But hey, the 9/11 Commission and the FBI looked into it, and at the time they said his account is accurate.
Yeah, it sounds legit.
It sounds super legit.
And this is why I like Vivek, bro. Like, he's tapping into this, and this is, I think, the reason why he's gained such popularity is he's tapping into this feeling that people have. And Trump, Trump is the original. Like, we all give our flowers to Trump. Trump started the fake news and all this stuff. But Vivek is like articulating exactly, hey, like, there's some fishy stuff that's going on in our government, and we need to like reform it fast. And some of the I don't understand how we allow like a small group of people to have such control over the the political parties. And I'm talking about the donor class, right? And is further into the video, he'll discuss this with Tucker, but it seems like a lot of the people that run our government, they don't trust us to know what's really going on. And I think this is following a theme that Vivek's been pushing throughout his campaign called the noble lie. And he's going to bring it up again in this interview as well, right? Jonathan Fields. Oh, yeah. I mentioned that Vivek is second place in the latest polls. Numbers can change. Once another poll came out, they may have DeSantis back at 2. But it's just, we're starting to see the norm that Vivek is challenging for second place. And I think that Vivek has a great chance to extend that lead a little bit further if he does exceedingly well in the debates next week. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Right. Now, there was some
hanging out at LAX.
These guys came from Saudi Arabia. Does this guy who received them have any ties to Saudi Arabia? That's where they landed. But now, 20 years later, in 2021 and 2022, the FBI quietly declassifies documents. And they have to. 20 years later is the deadline. That suggests that, oh, wait a minute. They did know, actually, that this guy was a Saudi intelligence operative. Interesting how that works. Just slips that right under there 20 years later. Now, there are real consequences for this right now because there's a federal case of families of victims on 9/11 that want accountability, that are determining answers. So they're suing the Saudi government.
As they should.
And the case turns on whether or not this is true. Because those attackers were from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
The Bush administration, you'd have the 9/11 Commission, bipartisan. You have the fact of the FBI, CIA, everybody saying that, no, this guy was really just acting independently here. But now we say is a Saudi intelligence operative.
It's crazy how, like, the government will throw smokescreen at people to distract them. And Jonathan Fields, I'm gonna answer your question. Do you think that the topics that are discussed in society, like affirmative action, transgenderism, are just topics that's supposed to blind us from what's really going on? Yeah, like what's really, really important. Exactly. For instance, like what he was bringing up with the Saudi case, like, hey, a Saudi agent came in from Saudi Arabia and talked with these two terrorists that end up destroying and attacking the Twin Towers in New York City, right? Oh, instead of that, like, it's easier to control a people that are divided. Like I think Abraham said, a house divided cannot stand. And yes, I believe transgenderism, affirmative action, having black goes against white it's because the government know that the only way it can face real repercussions is if a people is united against it. Like it can't play, oh, I'm gonna pin the black people against the white people, right? It's like squirrel. That's what the government wants to do. Squirrel. Oh, but we seen an example of this. Biden gets some negative news that hit him. What they do a day after, indict Donald Trump, and then the news become about who? Donald Trump, right? And that I think it's a topic I brought up before. How the mainstream media has a very heavy liberal bias, and they're like, yo, GOJ, we don't want to cover Biden, man. We don't want our guy to look bad, man. Give us something give us something else to talk about. DOJ go, I got you. Indict Donald Trump. That was Jack Smith's playbook right there. Oh, negative news came out about Hunter Biden. Biden's coming back into the news. Oh, we can't have that. We can't have that negative press. Biden's already down in the polls. Indict Donald Trump. Now all the new stuff is about Donald Trump, right? And I think those are smoke screens that people like our media may. Because this is the danger with media, and Michael X recognized this too. The media can make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent. It's because the media can control what you pay attention to, especially if you're like majority of people. And this is a concept that I guess I'm starting to put out there more, is rational ignorance. And we know, yeah, YouTube, exactly. We know big tech. We know big tech is colluding with the government in a way, and this is kind of the marriage that I don't like seeing with the government. The government is colluding with the corporations influencing the government, and the government's influencing corporate America. And I think that needs to be separated. Just like liberals came out and said separation of church and state, because back in the older days, the times of kings and rulers and nobles, the church and the government, aka the king's parliament, the king's government, used to commingle with each other and used to psyop with each other. Okay, in their church, they'll put out this message: oh, the king is descended from God. Oh, the king is anointed by God. Right? That was the church role. And in return, the church say, hey, I have some influence in the government, and the government has influence in the church. Right? Now the media is essentially taking that position, and now they're essentially an arm of the government, and big tech is becoming an arm of the government. Right? I think the Twitter CEO recently came out with guidelines about election coverage to protect users from misinformation, right? They use you as the pretext. Oh, we're looking out for the little guy. We're looking out to protect the people. But in reality, they're all doing is, hey, I want to craft a narrative so that way the people are only exposed to what I want them to be exposed to. This is why the media is such dangerous. And this is why I think alternative media is going to continue growing. Civilian journalists is going to continue growing, because the American people don't trust the government as much as the government distrusts the American people. And I think this is one of the reasons why Trump won, because people weren't paying attention to the plight of the average everyday American. And Trump was the middle finger to all that, right? And then after we got a good economy out of Trump, I think it's going to be a hard time to sell from the Democratic Party. I think this is why they're indicting the hell out of Trump right now. But yeah, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
There's really the question of whether the Saudi Arabia owes damages to these families. So this is a relevant question. So is this the main point I'm focused on in my campaign? No, I'm not. We have to focus on the future of the country. But if I'm asked a question and I answer honestly based on the facts, I don't think they would have come for me if this was false, if this was ludicrous.
Yeah, exactly. Of course.
Lying is never punished.
Lying is never punished.
Yeah, lying is never punished. And this is another problem in politics too. All right, Joe Biden can lie about his record, how he said I was for civil rights and all this stuff, when he was saying racist stuff like, oh, I don't want my kids to be part of a racial jungle, when he was going against integration, right? But he can lie about his record. No one's going to condemn him for that. No one's going to challenge Joe Biden on that, right? But God forbid someone says the truth about Joe Biden and they get attacked instead of the other way around. And this is kind of the backwardness of our politics. And this is why I asked the question, is America really ready for honest politicians? Right? A politician that say, hey, I'm going to build a wall, does every attempt to build a wall. The uniparty all stand against him so he doesn't build a wall. Right? And I think is the donor class really is the biggest, I think, hurdle that the grassroots movement conservative has to deal with. As you obviously saw with the RNC, we try to, I forgot her name. Guys. But she was running for the RNC chair. Harmeet, I think her name, Harmeet. And she didn't win because what? The donor class said, hey, no, we want Ronald McDaniels to continue being the RNC chair. Even though they lost election after election, like the 2020 election, the 2022 midterms, we keep rewarding these failed people with our resources, right? And we're stuck in a rock in the hard place, right? So I think that this is one of the ways that I guess grassroots people can fight back is like, hey, like Vivek is the popular one. I don't care how many times you put Ron DeSantis in our face. I don't care how many times you guys say Ron DeSantis is the guy. Nah, this Vivek guy, he's speaking to us. We're going to follow him. And that's how Trump won in 2015. People are like, oh, Donald Trump don't got a chance. And I see the same kind of momentum that Vivek could have. Now, I don't know how he's going to do against Trump, honestly. Like, that's still up in the air, right? But even if he doesn't do well, even if he finished second, in my view, Vivek is going to be the next one up, in my view, right? But hey, you know, anything can happen at this point. I'm not going to assume I know the future or anything, because at the end of the day, we're all speculating right now. Right? Just like in 2015, we thought Jeb Bush would be the guy. Ted Cruz will be the guy. Rubio, I forgot his name, will be the guy. And then what happened? Trump came out, smacked all of them, and now he's the guy. Same thing can happen in 2024. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
But it's speaking the truths you're not supposed to speak. That's what actually attracts the immune response, the anaphylaxis.
But why? I mean, you made I thought a really wonderful point in one of your responses to this, in which you said it's not okay for the government to lie to us, period, in a democracy. It's poison, and it corrodes the system that we revere, democracy. So, but why would the Wall Street Journal take time out of its busy schedule of defending low capital gains taxes to attack you over this?
You know, what's interesting is I think that there's a bipartisan consensus in this country right now that we, the people, we can't handle the truth. Yeah. It's like Jack Nicholson at the end of the movie, right? Yes. You can't handle the truth. You need me on that wall. My view, my basic view in this campaign is no, we don't need you on that wall. And yes, we can handle the truth. COVID-19, what was the origin? What did we know about the vaccines before we mandated them? What did we know about Hunter Biden's dealings before we systematically suppressed that story? What do we know about the truth of what happened on January 6th? What do we know about that Nashville shooter manifesto, the transgender individual who shot up a bunch of people in a Christian school?
Yep.
That's why I went to Nashville not that long ago, because Bill Lee, a Republican governor of Tennessee, now wants to pass a red flag law in Tennessee without releasing that manifesto.
That's crazy.
The whole point is the public can't handle the truth.
Yeah, and this is a big problem too in our politics, is that, and this is why I say, like, is Americans really ready for an honest politician? Because I think if these at the end of the day, I think it's up to us to really be honest with each other and be like, hey, look, these politicians, they care about getting elected, and we got to make sure that there's something, like, we have to use our leverage as voters to make sure to say, hey, if you don't do what you say, your butt's coming out of that office. Like, you're not going to stay in power, and it requires Americans at large to be vigilant on what's going on in the government. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages that government takes advantage of, because there's a quote from Hitler. I know, bad guy, but he made sense. Lucky for the government that its people are foolish, right? And that's a bit, because if you look at the votes, ignorant voters, like people who don't know, like low informed voters are almost a sizable, like they're actually the majority in this country. Like, you could say that maybe 33% of this country actually know what's going on from, like, at a moderate level in politics, right? There's people of different political knowledge, but for the most part, a lot of people are just ignorant on the ins and outs. They have short-term memory. They don't remember what Biden did last year. They don't remember that the economy was at its worst, We're dealing with record high gas prices. They just dealing with what's going on right now, right today. Right. And then I think this is how politicians take advantage of things. And as long as the media doesn't bring attention to it, people will gradually forget. And that's what's going on currently in our politics. And this is why they say, hey, it's a republic if you can keep it, because it's the job of every American to kind of be vigilant on what's going on. And I think we don't take that seriously enough. And I think like the country is like almost breaking at the seams. And I think this is why they don't like Trump in a way, because Trump brought a lot of attention to the government. Everybody was paying attention on what was going on in the government throughout Trump's entire presidency. Look at Joe Biden. No one talks about Joe Biden. Joe Biden can't hold anyone's attention unless he starts gaffing and stuff. And even then, the media won't show you that. The media is going to show you a nice, crafted view of the president, so that way you assume, oh yeah, everything's all fine. Right? And I think that's the biggest problem right now. And this is why I say alternative media is essentially the future. And anyway, my generation as millennials, we get most of our news from social media anyway. So, now it's going to be harder to craft a narrative. This is why the government has been pinging Twitter, YouTube, maybe other social media platforms to, hey, like, censor these stories we don't like. Hey, deboost these people, because they're starting to realize, damn, the attention is not on cable news anymore. It's in the social media. So private business, government are in cahoots with each other to craft a certain narrative. But yeah, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
And so I had offline discussions. I mean, we're talking with, big donors in the Republican Party, big folks in media, executives and otherwise, who said, hey, listen, okay, even if what you're saying is true, this is not helping you. You say, why is that the first question that should go through my mind, right? I mean, personally,
see, that's the problem, right? Conflict of interest. Hey, this is they scare these politicians. Hey, don't speak about that. Voters don't like that, and then you find out voters love that, right? When Trump talked about building a wall, when Trump criticized, the Iraqi war, a lot of big political pundits was chastising Trump. Oh, how you could be against the war? How can you criticize your own side? Oh, conservative voters ain't gonna like the fact that you criticize one of their, I guess, policy positions. Like, end of the day, they were trying to make the argument that, hey, George Bush was the one that led the charge into the Iraqi war, and criticizing that is a criticism of conservative voters. They're not gonna like that, bruh. Trump won. That what made Trump won. Trump was just being honest, and I think if conservatives can keep this kind of brand, hey, conservative voters like honest politicians. If we can create a political norm, a political expectation that, hey, like, you can't BS conservative voters, bro. You got to give it to them straight, or else you ain't gonna win. If we can start making that a trend in conservative movement, I think we would win, right? Our habits will naturally filter out the disingenuous, the liars, the people who try to play the game to win, right? Public policy, private policy, those type of politicians, we can weed them out a lot. It will be a lot harder for these people to gain influence in the party. And I think that's what we should focus on, in my view, but I digress.
I think the way I'm running this campaign is I'm not thinking about what's helping me or not before I say it. So far, at least that approach does seem to be helping me.
Yes.
We're doing all right. But even if I weren't, I'd rather lose some election than to play some political snakes and ladders of what we're supposed to.
Snakes and ladders. Boy, hey, when I first heard that, I said, yo, this man, way with words. Snakes and ladders. I don't want to play no political snakes and ladders. Oh, I got to stay within the lines. I got to stay within the lines so I can keep going forward. No. Right? I could respect someone more that say, hey, I'd rather lose being me than win faking being someone else. I can appreciate that kind of authenticity, right? When you don't focus on the result, it's freeing. Hey, I just want to clarify my position. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm just trying to speak my mind, bro. That's freeing. You don't have to worry about or playing these little games like, oh, how's my polling? Did they like what I like? Did they like what I said on this poll? Right, and I think that's what's happening with Ron DeSantis in a way, because when Ron DeSantis was running for governor in my state of Florida, he didn't do any polls. He never did any polls. Right, he just did what he felt was right. And now that he's running for president, I think people, his team or whoever's helping him run his campaign, they're in his ear saying, hey, man, that didn't poll well. Hey, you got to be careful how you speak about the Ukrainian war, right? I think people are like that, or like kind of misleading him. And this is why there's like some people are just like, we don't really quite like DeSantis like that. We'll deal with him, right? DeSantis out of Vivek Trump looks like the most establishment candidate. Like, he's tolerable. Like, people say, hey, like, I like DeSantis, even though he's an establishment guy. Like, people can paint him as an establishment guy because they're like, oh yeah, the establishment like him and he's effective. But man, we like the rebels. We like Vivek. Vivek is doing a different style, I guess, and I guess it's helping him in a ways that he's different. He's tangibly different. You see Trump as, yo, that's the guy, pragmatic, whatever. Like, you logically, it's Trump's world. We all live in it at this moment. Vivek is more like, oh, this is the idealistic, visionary. Like, he has something that's divides, separates him from Trump. While you see Ron, you're like, okay, Ron is like the coolest establishment type or career politician that we like him. We like what he did in Florida, but he ain't them, right? And I'm interested to see like how him and Vivek go at it, because they're going to be the top two targets in my view, right? In the GOP debate next week. But I digress.
And I think that that's really one of the questions at issue today, as it was in 1776. Do we believe that the public can be trusted with the truth? Whatever the truth is, just give me the hard truth. I mean, I have a friend of mine, her father died recently. She talked about actually her experience of her father having heart attacks even when she was a kid. He went on to live as far as he did. But she said the one thing she just wanted from the doctors, from her dad, et cetera, is, you know, she's 12 years old at the time. I can handle the truth. Just tell me, like, is my dad going to die? Is my dad likely to die before he goes in for the next procedure? Don't just tell me he's going to live because you think that's what I need to hear.
Yeah, and this is my thing too. Politicians have this sense that they need to sell hope, right? And this is something Democrats do. They sell a hope. Hey, we can change the world. Like, Barack Obama is the biggest example of this. Hope and change. And then when he got in office, what he did, everything kind of stayed the same, right? He sold them a bill of goods, but he said that's what people want. That's what people reward, right? And as long as the American people keep rewarding politicians that sell lies, but because they need a sense of hope, oh, we don't need to touch Social Security. We can continue funding Social Security. In reality, a lot of people are saying, hey, look, practically, we're going to have to raise the age of retirement to maintain Social Security at its current pace. Nope, no American want to hear that, apparently. But this is what I'm talking about, like the truth. Like, we need politicians that tell us the story. Hey, look, there's a fire in the cabinet and we need to take it out. Oh, I don't want to hear none of that, bro. I don't want to hear that. That's how Americans talk. They want to stay comfortable in their ignorance. This is why they reward politicians who will give them sweet lies over bitter truth. And it's about time that America and our country take some medicine. Like, we need to make some sacrifices, or else we may not have a country in the future, right? We ain't going to pass down a good country in the future. But I digress.
Just tell me the truth and I can handle the truth. I think most of us are this way. I think we as free human beings, what makes us human beings and not animals is the belief that we can believe in something bigger than ourselves and that we can handle the truth from those who are in power. And I think that's the moment we live in today. It was the moment of the American Revolution, that we the people can be trusted. And I think we now live in a moment where the government, and not just the government, but a broader establishment in our country, believes that citizens of this nation cannot be trusted with the truth.
So when you describe the way that people who run the country feel about voters, you're describing the way parents treat small children.
Yep.
That's right. That's right. I think that's actually worth understanding, because there's one school of thought that says the government and the people in charge are fundamentally hostile to the people. If only it were so easy, actually. I think the reality of what's going on is far more dangerous, where the people who are in charge have actually what they think of as a benevolent view of the people, that we're doing what's actually right for you, for me, for the populace at large. And then if you look at this throughout history, Tucker, for most of human history, that's how it's been done. For most of human history, before 1776, in the old world, the vision was the people cannot be trusted to sort out their own differences. One person, one vote? That's such a laughable idea. It has to be church leaders and labor leaders and business leaders that decide in the back of palace halls what's right for the rest of society at large.
Yeah, the old world was run by central planners. Hey, you had the kings, the prime ministers, whatever. and they decided, oh, this is the direction we'll take the country. You peasants, you serfs, you just follow, right? And in America, deciding radical, they're like, nah, we all have equal vote. We as a people will decide. The community, the wisdom of the crowd will decide the direction of the country. And slowly, America is starting to become that way of where we let a small group of people kind of determine the direction of our country, right? And it's the same thing with the stakeholder capitalism stuff that's going on with the ESG movement and all of these corporations. They think they know what's best for you. Bud Light, Disney, they're like, hey, like we're saying, hey, we don't want this stuff. Disney's like, no, you need this stuff, right? And it's that same dynamic playing out. Like, hey, these small group of people think they're smarter than you. They know what's best for you, like a parent and a child, like me and my son. I know what's best for my son. Even if he thinks he knows what's best for him, I know better because I've been around longer. That's the same approach the government take, except the problem is a lot of the people in government are the same age as us in the population. It's just we don't have a bigger microphone. We don't have a big microphone to tell them otherwise, right? And they got all these people in the same class, same cabal. They all grew up in the same schools, went to the same colleges, and they're stuck in a little ruling class echo chamber, and they don't hear what like little old me or you and how we're suffering from their bad decision making and their bad policies. They don't hear that. They just say, oh, look how virtuous we are. We're fighting against systematic racism. But functionally, they never corrected. They haven't really corrected any real problems. All they did was sell comfort to a group of people and allow them to continually believing that they're a helpless victim and they can do nothing about their circumstances. This is why I said the government likes dependency, right? Never let a good crisis go to waste. That's a saying for a reason, because these politicians, they're like, oh, look, see, this is why we need to take control, because we need to take care of you guys, right? We're grown adults. Like, you have to be over 18 to vote. They don't need to be like babying us, but that's how they take us, because end of the day, the truth is not convenient for their power. And that's the point. That's the trade-off a lot of people have to recognize when they put these people in positions of power. But I digress.
And then we had this weird departure in 1776 that said, no. Actually, we the people can be trusted in a system where every person's voice and vote counts equally, with free speech and open debate in the public square, whatever it is. Sometimes we might get it wrong. Sometimes we get it right. But whatever it is, that's the way we do things in this new thing we call the United States of America. But then every once in a while, and we're in one of those moments, that ugly monster rears its head again that says, no. The people can't be trusted. It has to be now in the back of palace halls, in the back of three-letter government agencies in Washington, D.C., or in the back of BlackRock's corner office on Park Avenue in Manhattan, wherever it is. It's that the enlightened have to make sure that the public is protected from the truth, just like a parent protects a child. And I think it's that parental instinct. It's not the kidnapper's instinct, right? It's not the guy who wants to, kidnap and kill the child. No, it's actually almost what they think of as being the instinct of a parent who's doing for you what's better for you than you know for yourself. And I think that's what gives it actual staying power, because it's not what somebody thinks of as evil who's committing evil. They think of it as actually a moral obligation to the public, which explains the bipartisan nature of when somebody speaks the truth about what really happened on 9/11. No, hush, keep that under the rug, because Republican or Democrat, we know that the people can't be trusted for that. It's not good for the people.
The children are listening. Lower your voice.
The kids are listening.
Yeah. Do you get the sense, as you travel the country, talk to people, speak, that we're on it feels like we're on the cusp of chaos?
I think we're on the cusp of something. I'd like to think of it as a revolution, in a positive sense of that word. I think it's a cultural revolution, in my view. Like, you see what's going on, like, with this pushback against this woke ideology. Like, hey, yeah, we had enough of this. Relax, relax, Target, relax, Budweiser, relax, Bud Light, relax, Disney. We don't need this stuff. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of you pushing your agenda into these movies. I'm tired of all this stuff, right? Because this is where that dynamic comes from. Like, hey, I know what's best for you. You don't know what's best for me, right? And the government always had this problem, because government always need justification for more power. And the only way you can a government can justify having more power is this idea, hey, I'm here to help, right? What Ronald Reagan said, the worst thing a government can say is I'm here to help, because the government doesn't actually know what is actually best for the people.
The people know what's best for the people, right? I know what's better for my situation than a government official somewhere in Washington. If they pass some law like, oh, okay, we're going to tax the rich and give to the poor. If I'm rich, oh, it's going to hurt me. Oh, but, it helps majority of black people. So it's okay. Sacrifice for the greater good. Oh, no, but you're hurting my family. Right? And this is the kind of the trade-off that government doesn't understand. But they think they should be able to subscribe some general solution that's supposed to help a large swath of people. And they're like, hey, look, we spent this amount of money. Rely on us. No, the government is inefficient at resource management. All you have to do is check the United States Postal Office versus UPS. Who would you rather deliver your package? We all know the answer to that. The government is heavily inefficient, and it always tries to justify its own power. But I digress.
I try to be an optimist at times.
But you feel like this is...
Oh, there's something going on.
Yeah.
I think we're like in a 1775, spring of 1776 moment in this country, actually. I think that people are hungry. Now, the form I want to see it play out in is reviving those shared ideals that unite us, that set the nation into motion in 1776, that I think are innate to our nature as human beings, as Americans. I think that there's a hunger for a revival of those ideals. That's where we are, but there's a lot of ways that energy could go. The way I would like to play my small role in helping channel that energy, it's not all going to be done by the U.S. president, but there's a role to play, is to channel that energy towards a positive revival of that which unites us across our diverse attributes or divides. But
yeah, in my view, in a multiracial republic, democracy, whatever you want to label our United States, a republic, in my view, is that you need ideals, values, and virtues that are beyond your race, gender, or sexual identity, right? And this is why I think the Democrats and the left, they focus so hard in putting people in these identity box, and they focus on intersectionality because they want to be able to, hey, I want to cater to this group of people, pit them against this group of people, so that way I can win. When I think the game conservatives should be trying to play is like, hey, look, we're all Americans here. We all have a duty and obligation to America. We all are loyal to America because if America lose, we all lose. So let's pitch in and make this country a better country. And I think if we make that the focus, it's a more unifying message than trying to play the same race identity politics game that the Democrats like to play with the victimhood narrative and all that stuff. I think if we continue pushing against that and saying, hey, like, you're an American, I'm an American. Look, we may not agree on solutions to the problems, but we need to do what's best for the country. And right now, your solution is kind of going to push China into Russia's hands, Russia into China's hands. It's kind of going to make things harder for America. I don't see how you can justify pushing for reparations or more government spending when we're still dealing with this. We can't pay down debt. We just got our credit rating lowered by Fitch. Like, how you can justify more spending, right? If you make the focus about how we're going to improve the lifestyle and well-being of the American people, I think a lot of this politically bickering will die down now because we have a point of origin. We have a goal. But if your goal, which is what's going on right now, is, hey, I just want my guy to win, then you'll lie, cheat, smear, libel, lie on someone else, mischaracterize people's arguments, strawman them, make them out to be villains in your story. And it becomes a game of divide and conquer. And as long as your guy win, you're happy. These tribal politics. And I think our tribal politics should not be based on political party, but it should be based on nationality. What's good for our nation. And arguments should be centered around that. Not, oh, I'm going to bribe these group of voters with this group of voters with that. And I think this is what our politics has become now in America and in the West in general. People are thinking about me instead of thinking about we, right? But I digress.
If it doesn't go that way, there's a dam that's going to break and the river's going to go somewhere. I hope it leads towards a national revival rather than, other places where this could go.
How concerned are you about a real economic reset in the next year?
Quite concerned. I think that 2024 is going to be
I'm just going to chime in real quick. I honestly believe we've been in a recession for at least a year already. It's just the media don't want to let the American people know yet, because the layoffs we experienced over the past year, the rate of the higher cost of groceries. Oh my God, my budget. I had to increase my budget again just to afford groceries. Right, gas is still a problem. Like I just noticed that things are increasingly more expensive over the past year. And to me, I'm like, yo, we're in a recession already. I've been saying, like, if you watch past videos when I talk about the economy, I always mention, hey, look, I'm going by the traditional definition of a recession. When we got 2 negative quarters of GDP, we're in a recession. And then Biden administration, the media, and this is why I said the media is a big problem here, is because the media controls the narrative. They control perception, right? And the perception work on what? The rationally ignorant people who choose not to be informed about politics and how cause and effect certain policies creates certain negative outcomes. They control what these group of people pay attention to, or what these group of people are know about. So they go, oh, we're not in a recession. Oh, it's more complicated than that. We're in a K-shaped recovery. I'm still waiting for that K-shaped recovery, right? But the American people, even the rationally ignorant, they're like, yo, I don't understand. Everything's more expensive. I just got fired from my job because mass layoffs are happening, at least in tech. For me, tech has been a big issue. People, I feel like they're at risk of losing their job, right? If you put out the narrative that a recession happened, hey, banks, here's another example. Banks are closing. Banks were closing. Silicon Bank, anyone remember that? All of this happened in the past year. But the media is still telling you you're not in a recession. Bruh, this is what I'm talking about. This is the noble lie that I agree with Vivek that he's pointing out, is that the ruling class think that you can't handle the truth, right? They have to keep putting up the interest rate numbers. At this point, interest rate might be at 9% by the end of the year. Who knows? Because they can't. The inflation rate is going crazy. Oh, we tapered down inflation, but based on 2 years ago, cost of living is increased by 26%. But inflation went down compared to what? It's craziness. This is why the media is the most dangerous entity in the world. But I digress.
A year where it's not going to take a lot of guts for me to make this prediction, because I'll tell you why it's easy to make. We're on the cusp of a major economic downturn next year. We live under conditions of a deeply inverted yield curve. I mean, these are topics that may put people to sleep, and so we don't have to.
Can you explain
get into it? Yeah, I mean, it's basically you would expect in the long run, right? Long run interest rates on long run bonds are higher compared to interest rates on short run bonds, because there would be higher risk of being repaid back. That's how things are supposed to work. There are a wide range of factors that can occasionally cause that to tilt in the other direction. We're in one of those conditions right now, where the interest rates on short-term bonds are significantly higher than they are on long-run bonds. And every time that's happened in the last 40 years, that has predicted a recession that followed in the year or so that came later. And there's lots of complicated reasons for why, and economists can debate it. But what's not debatable is that that's exactly what happens. That's where we are now, which is why we're, I think, in the calm before the storm. Biden will put up low unemployment numbers. Well, that misses the point that we have a deeper structural deficiency, where our real problem is there are twice as many jobs open as there are people looking for work.
Yep. Right.
That's the actual deeper structural failure as it relates to the labor market.
People have stopped looking for work.
Yeah, because of the incentive that the government has put in place. The government has put in an incentive where people don't want to go to work. Biden keeps floating around student loan forgiveness. Now people feel like they shouldn't even pay their student loans if they have under 10K in student loans, because they're like, oh, Biden's going to pay for it. People are sitting here waiting for a prayer that student loan forgiveness gets passed by Biden. It's crazy. People are waiting for the government to do for them. They're waiting for the government to feed them. And that's not a role you want the government to be in. Like I said, if someone's responsible for it, they have authority over it. So if you put Joe Biden as responsible in paying off your student loan, then best believe that Joe Biden and his administration will exercise their authority over you. Hey, if you want me to forgive your student loans, I need you to be COVID vaccinated. How many people are going to run and go get the vaccine? If Joe Biden said, hey, if you want your $10,000 student loan debt to be forgiven, You better vote Democrat next. Democrats better win the House and the Senate. How many people will go out and vigorously advocate for that stuff? Right? You become a carrot on a stick. And then when they don't fulfill their promise, they're going to we're going to keep this in our back pocket. Just like every 4 years, the Democrats come in and start pandering to black folks. Right? The whole 3 years. Nothing about black people. Or unless something happened, a shooting happened here or there, and they can use, they can start pandering, whatever. But, every 4 years, they make a concerted effort. Okay, let me sell these people false hope. Make them feel comfortable in their plight, in their situation. And then I'm guaranteed to get 80% of their vote. Right? And this is the game. Right? This is why I said I don't think America's ready for honest politicians. Right? Because we're not rewarding honest politicians. When you get Rand Paul out here saying, hey, look, some of these conservatives, if you got conservatives like this in Senate, who needs enemies? We need a fiscal responsibility. We need a budget. Regular people don't like budgets. So now when someone in the government say, hey, the government need a budget, damn for sure a lot of people in the government don't like budgets. Because how are they going to pay off their friends? How are they going to pay their donors? How are they going to give kickbacks to the lobbyists that funded their campaigns? If we put everything on a budget, it's going to be harder to do that. And this is one of the reasons I think I like Vivek so much, is that Vivek has this idea that government and the private sector should be completely isolated from each other. They should not be able to influence each other at all. Pretty much eliminating donations from corporations. If you're a CEO, you could personally donate to your campaign, whatever, but you can't use your corporation's platform to push a particular politician into power. The lobbyist class, the donor class, those needs to go. But right now, you need to win right now, and then you fix the problems later. And I think that's the game, the delicate balance we have to play. Because the old guard will always defend its interest versus the uprising populace that's going on right now. And that's what Trump represents. The uprising populace coming in to overthrow the establishment. The establishment like, no way, we're not losing this. This is why the lobbyists are funding all these other Republicans so that they have a greater shot at winning. The only politicians that's willing to speak for the grassroots conservative is Vivek and Trump. And that's mainly because what? They're self-funded in a way. In majority of their campaign is self-funded. So I think that's the reality in politics right now. So you got to play the game. And then once you win, you got to be able to go fix it. If Trump gets in there, it's vengeance time. Hey, he cleaning the house. He getting his revenge. And in a way, through him, we get our revenge. Vivek is like visionary. In the future, we'll guide the country back into an American pride, a patriotism revival is what he likes to say. National revival, I believe that's what he likes to say. But I've been rambling too long. I better get like some 6 minutes more into the video.
People have stopped looking for work. Absolutely. I mean, people are being paid more or have been habituated more to staying at home than to go to work. People also don't have the skill sets required to actually show up to work because they have four-year college degrees that were subsidized by the U.S. Department of Education without actually having the skill sets that many employers badly need in order to.
I want to touch the college point too, is that when government comes in and say, hey, we're going to fund college, you fund degrees that will get a job and you fund degrees that don't get a job, right? So you cause inefficient waste in a way, right? Because if only the market was responsible for funding college, let's say us, if we were the only money that was coming through the college will cater the degrees to stuff that's actually applicable to an actual job at the end of it. But because government is funding it, made people getting FAFSA, student loan, federal student loans, it allows these useless degrees to also get funding because there's no consequences for having a bad product in the college, right? This is the reason. This is one of the arguments for privatizing education, is because, hey, you don't have the money to waste on ineffective degrees or useless degrees. You need to put all your money on the degrees that actually bring in the customers, aka the students, right? This is what I'm saying. Like, the government creates incentive structures that essentially set people up for failure. And then they want to come in and say, oh, you need me. I'm here to help more. I'm here to help more. And now you're just making the problem worse, government.
Grow their business, whether it's a big business or a small one. The inflation numbers, they'll point to saying, hey, the rate of inflation is coming down. Inflation's cumulative. Things are still 16, 20% more expensive than they were in 2020, and
Yep.
wages have not gone up in the same way over the same period. And so there are deep structural issues with our economy. I mean, the national debt, interest payments are going to be the biggest portion and line item of the federal budget very soon.
Bro, me and my wife were looking for a car for my obviously you guys may or may not know I have 2 kids. My second one was born in sorry, I always forget the date. And I know. June 13th. And I saw a loan for $35,000 from my bank. For $35,000. The monthly payment was almost $700 a month. And I looked at my wife, I was like, yo, who gonna pay that for a $35,000 car? You're going to pay almost $700 a month. Now I understand why the average car payment in America is $400, $500 now. Now I understand. Because right now I bought my car in 2019 for $18,000. And I pay about what? $390 for my car. I'm about to finish off paying off my car this year. It's a Honda. I have a Honda Accord. I'm about to finish paying it off by the end of the year. And I paid $400 for that car. And that's a 3-year loan because I wanted to pay it off quick. But to see a car, $35,000, I'm like, wow. I'm gonna pay. You could pay $700, and that's with me with good credit. I got good credit. Imagine if you don't got good credit. You paying way more than $700. Now I see. I'm like, yo, like this economy is bad. I appreciate this. I appreciate the nice comment, Jonathan Fields. Jonathan Fields says, "Oh, congrats on your children, and they will definitely be raised very well." I hope to live up to that expectation, bro. But let's continue with the video.
Soon. But I think that short-term numbers that we look at right now belie the reality that we're going to have a reckoning. I think that reckoning is likely going to, the timing of these things is hard to predict, but I think that likely reckoning 2024 could be a pretty good prediction for when that's coming.
But that's not just an economic story. I mean, people have psychologically, I think, a very hard time moving backward.
Yes.
Right? It's one thing to be poor. It's another thing to be poor having been rich.
Yep.
Yes.
Very hard for people to metabolize that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that happens to hundreds of millions of people at the same time, people get radical.
Especially against the backdrop of already having deep distrust.
Right.
In my opinion, appropriately deep distrust.
I agree.
In our existing institutions, including the government in this country. And so I think there are 2 ways this could break. Right? Sometimes you go through hardship and you're strengthened by that hardship. I'm just thinking about it as an individual in my life. Like I've gone through a hardship in my life. My father's been through hardship. In each of those cases, that led us to become stronger for having gone through that and did things that we otherwise would have never done, created things in the world that otherwise would have never existed. And that's the positive version of this. And it's the version I want to see for our country. But there's a very different way this could break too. I think that if we don't channel that frustration in a direction that creates something anew, right? A sort of reincarnation of our American experiment, which is what's going to be required. Mm-hmm. Then I think this ends the way that many other revolutions do, is not the...
Appreciate, sorry, I was looking at you guys. So appreciate the follow, Toby Chaser 62. Yeah, I the car market is not good right now, bro. Like if you got to buy a car in this market, bro, I my condolences, bro. Like I think at this point you're better off trying to go with a super used car, try to find something reliable, because I think that's the only car that you can possibly afford paying cash. If you try to buy a new car right now, hey, I might have to wait. I'm gonna wait for a bit. So I wanted to get back to what Vivek was mentioning before, of how the way that our current situation is going, it leaves our country vulnerable for a radical to come take over. This is usually how socialism takes over a country. When the government or the ruling class messes up and people are so dissatisfied with the government that they believe some dude that's some radical that's like, yo, I'm going to take out the government completely. Either anarchy or totalitarianism can come in. And that's how a lot of communist and socialist countries came about, right? That's how Hitler got into power. The government failed in Germany, right? The people were so radically dissatisfied with the current circumstances, and Hitler tapped into that anger, and he got himself into power. And next you know, boom, we have Nazi Germany. And this is the same pattern can happen here in the States. So this is why it's important. I think it's important that we make sure that let people know the moment that it is or that could occur in our country. especially with my generation, millennials. Look, the younger you go, the more partisan the generations become. So, hey, I'll be surprised if we don't have a national divorce or some big spectacular event of like a national divorce or some kind in my lifetime. I wouldn't be surprised, right? Right. So someone's laughing. Hey, got here late, like your Trump impersonation. Man, I try. I try to make it entertaining for you guys. You guys are gonna sit here and watch me talk for almost maybe an hour and 30. That's what I'm shooting for, an hour 30. So I kind of want to keep it entertaining for you. Okay, let's press play.
Creative kind, but the destructive kind. And I think the economic collapse calamity, recession at least that's coming, could just be the catalyst. We'll blame it on, that'll be the final match that's lit, but it's the kerosene on the floor that we have to pay attention to in the meantime. And that's why I think when people ask me, are you a culture issues guy, or are you an economy guy, or are you focused on foreign policy? It's missing the point. These things are each symptoms of a deeper
They're
place.
of a piece. There's no doubt.
No doubt about it.
So you said something when I saw you in Iowa earlier this summer. You said something really, really interesting about donors. And you are an interesting figure because you're effectively from the donor class. You're a rich guy running for president. Now you're dealing with donors from the other side. And
one thing, my biggest gripe, and I think this is the biggest opportunity I see, is that we need we need a idealistic donor that's like a populist as well, right? Like we need I always joke around. I said we need our version of we need our own George Soros type person. Like that donor that was like, yo, this man is ideological conservative, right? And I think we need that in our current party right now. And I think right now, I don't see that right now because I think, I remember, I forgot who mentioned this, but a lot of our political donor class in the conservative movement are like libertarian conservative types. And I think this is what's allow our party to be where it is today, right? This more liberal, Reaganite conservative. That's more of a liberal conservative more than just a conservative. And they're scared to really push back against this stuff because they're like, no, I just want to make my money. I'm about to peace out in 20 years. I don't want to stir up any trouble. The war helps us, right? It's baffling to me, right? You guys are laughing in the chat, but I digress. Let's continue.
You said that your views on Ukraine had given a lot of them pause.
Yes. There's no doubt that I have lost otherwise willing and interested donors or potential mega donors to my campaign over my position on Ukraine, which is fascinating because I don't think there's any particular self-interest at issue. It's not like somebody saying, oh, well, I own, a big chunk of Raytheon or something like that, and I'm going to have my interests harmed. Therefore, I'm not going to back you.
Jonathan Fields, I agree with your criticism right there. He said, I don't think that's going to happen, Kenny. That will be very rare if we get a person like that. I think if, let's say 5 years from now, I think Trump can be that. Like, Trump can be that donor that is very ideologically driven, right? I think that's a possibility for Trump after the 2024 election. That's what he can do after he runs president, whatever. He could be a king, because at the end of the day, I think Trump was trying to be a kingmaker. And one of the realities or one of the insights I've been exposed to is that the real kingmakers in politics seems to be the donors. And who's a big part of the donors? Corporations, right? And this is what progressives make this point all the time. They're talking about how, big corporate donors. And I'm starting to see the effects because now, corporations are doing this ESG stuff, right? Now they're donating to candidates. There's a reason why Biden raised more money in the history of campaign funds more than Trump, is because these corporations say, hey, we need our World Economic Forum guy to win. And that's why these big corporations donated so much money to Biden's campaign. Right? And that's what whoever's the Republican nominee, that's what they're going to go against when they face the establishment. So as grassroots people, I think it really is up to us to really fuel our people. And it's going to be a victory by committee. Like, we're going to be like, how many people voted for Donald Trump? I think it was 66 million people. It'll take every dollar from that 66 million people to support that Republican candidate so he has a chance. And I think that's where the grassroots movement, that's why I'm a populist, right? I'd rather a politician win because 66 million people donated to him than 3 corporations donate 66 million to him, right? I'd rather that happen, right? But that's reform. That's campaign reform that needs to happen in the future. But right now, you got to play with the rules you've been given. But I digress. Let's continue.
Because that will harm my self-interest. That'd be an easy and fun and facile explanation, but that's not what's going on. I think there is a deeper bipartisan institutional consensus, the same consensus that said we can't be told the truth about 9/11, that effectively says that we can't confront some of the same facts about Ukraine. And I try not to be reactive, Tucker, because it is a natural impulse where,
Of course.
at least the way I'm wired is, if somebody tells you not to do something, there's almost a natural temptation to go in that direction.
Right.
So I would like to think, and I believe my position here is grounded in fact and not that reactive emotion, but it's interesting that it makes me doubly committed to making sure that I'm really speaking the truth about what's going on here, at least because it means that the rest of the field absolutely is not.
I agree with that statement. And Jonathan Fields, yeah, I agree. Maybe Trump may not do this down the line, but you got what? Turning Point USA. That's what I'm saying. Like, we could essentially in the future, we could possibly have those donor classes that's very ideologically driven, right? I think I see Turning Point USA more as a super PAC, but that's the point of super PAC, political action committees. They're supposed to be that donor class that's ideologically driven. So in the future, we may have that. As of right now, I think you're right. Yes. I don't think there's a lot of, I don't think we'll have a politically driven donor in a long time down the road. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 20 years. But hey, a lot can change in 10 years. And also, I think depending on how Vivek does in this election, a lot of more politicians, because at the end of the day, politicians do what they see works, right? No one was talking about border security. No one would dare criticize the war until Trump did it and won, right? So I think depending on how well Vivek does, it will cause an incentive for other future politicians to follow. I agree with that. I digress. Let's continue.
Right. I mean, the rest
Well,
of
that's kind of the
entire
question.
Republican field, not one of them. I mean, Donald Trump, we could say he wants to end the war. He hasn't said exactly how. But save for Trump, right? Nobody on the debate stage, certainly for the Republican Party, has a principled position on Ukraine, partly because they understand.
Even DeSantis, when I put it up in my channel, it was about Ron DeSantis and foreign policy, I believe, and he became a political commentator during that stage. He didn't really give a position. He just saying, hey, like, we got to see all the factors, which is true. You got to see all the factors, but you don't know where Ron personally stands on that. And I think that's a question that Vivek might press Ron on the debate stage. And I think this is this is why I think Vivek is going to do so well in the Republican debates, is because I think he's really, especially if Trump doesn't, likely Trump's not going to go because it's close to the date he's supposed to turn himself in. Vivek can really come in and be like, yo, out of all the politicians that's here right now, I'm the only one that's against the war in Ukraine. Boom. Grassroots, they're like this. People like me, we're like this. The donor class, they're like this. Right? But that's the position that's where the conservative voters at right now. I don't care what the donors are doing. I don't care what they believe. We want the war to end as soon as possible because we're done seeing billions of dollars going to Ukraine. Right? But I digress. Let's get into it.
Those are the directions they've been given.
So you think it's interesting because there are a couple of fairly smart, I know them, people running for president right now in the Republican field whose positions on Ukraine are like idiotic.
Or indiscernible.
Right. They didn't make
the indiscernible one, he's talking about DeSantis. That's how I saw it. If you look at my commentary on that video, right? I forgot the name of the video, but it's like one of the few Ron DeSantis videos I did. It's based on foreign policy. It's going to be with Tucker Carlson. And you can see I was saying the same thing in my live reaction to that. It's like, yo, he didn't really answer the question. He kind of just gave like a breakdown, an analysis on the situation. He didn't really give me a position. He didn't really tell me where he stood, if he was for it, against it. He was just saying, look, when I get there, I'm going to deal with it. But right now, I can't speak on it because I don't have enough information, or, I don't want to limit my options, or I don't want to commit to something that I know I can't really commit to. And I think that's a big advantage Vivek is going to have on the debate stage. But We'll see how it plays out, obviously. We're all speculating here. I'm just speculating, but let's continue with the interview.
I mean, some are idiotic. The idiotic one is just we have to arm them to the teeth, give them as much money as possible because we stand with Ukraine. The indiscernible ones are the ones where they'll tell you one thing and then they'll tell their donors one thing and then they don't know where they actually stand because they're being buffeted.
But that's the effect of donor pressure. Right?
It is. It really is. It really is. Absolutely. I mean, I think that there's, and I think there's finger in wind candidates. And I think that exists. So there's finger and wind candidates on Ukraine, but I think that there are also separately candidates who just believe that this is the way that we do things in the United States of America. We don't stop until we have taken down what we have decided is our enemy, forgetting that the USSR doesn't exist anymore.
And
believe that that's the only source of victory. And so, my view, I start from a different premise, and there's pros and cons, right? On one hand, I don't have national ads running because my super PAC the super PAC affiliated with me is tiny compared to those affiliated with, other candidates in this race.
I think one of the things that in my mind that if I was, if I was not wealthy, I don't want to say wealthy, but if I had the means and influence, I would probably create a PAC. I'll be like, this is going to be the populist PAC, the Federalist Populist PAC. And we'll get donations from everybody. And then whoever is like, anti-establishment candidate in the Republican Party, we'll be like, hey, we'll fund you, bro. Because that's the real reason a lot of these politicians are tiptoeing around the Ukraine issue. Because the donors, they like it, they want it. The war helps them. If you Lockheed Martin, you want a war because you get to sell more merchandise, and then those funds will circulate back to the politician. Hey, here's your donation, right? That's what the donor class. When someone donate money, there's an expectation for it, and I think it's better if grassroots people, like everyday average people like me, donate to you, so you're accountable to us, right? It's the same thing with YouTube. I have 1 million. If you have 1 million subscribers and all those 1 million subscribers give you $1, you got $1 million right there, and you're not beholden to a company that's going to give you $1 million. You're going like, no, my supporters got me. This is crazy. The CR28 is like, we need a GoFundMe, bro. I think if America really show, I think this moment right here in 2024, I think it's all about unity. Whatever party or whoever ideology can stand united under one candidate or one party or whatever the case may be, I think they could really swing this election. Because right now, I see a lot of fragmentation everywhere in the Democratic Party, right? The Democratic elites, the Democratic establishment saying, hey, Joe Biden's the guy. The voters in the Democratic Party saying, nah, we don't want Joe Biden, right? It's craziness, right? And I think one part of the group, the faction that can stay united. Now, right now, I think it's American first people, populist people. If people can stand united and be like, hey, the cause is worth more than my pride in my candidate, whatever. You can push one of these politicians to victory. That's what happened. Literally, that's what happened with Trump. A group of people said, F the establishment, voted for Trump 2016, and then sent shockwaves. I think that's the only way that can happen today. COVID, the reason why I think Biden won is because there was no unity there. People were scared for their lives, there was an undertone of a threat of violence if the wrong president won that election. A lot of people were just fragmented and they're like, no, I just want to go back to normal. They were being pressured to go a certain way. The media put up a certain narrative where, hey, things will turn back to normal if Biden wins. Things won't turn back to normal if Trump wins. And I think in that moment of weakness, this is why Biden won the election in 2020. 2024, I think, is going to call for courage. It's going to call for people to, hey, we got to make some sacrifices here. We can't keep doing this. We can't keep putting establishment shills in the presidential office. I digress, though.
That have television ads blaring and lifting their numbers up in the polls because they're buying a bunch of TV ads. The flip side is I'm unconstrained by what I'm able to say. And that allows me to speak truth that a lot of people in this country recognize to be the truth, which is that we have no discernible national interest at issue in Ukraine. The truth is that as much as we will fetishize and debate the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, which the U.S. wrote, UK and Russia were also parties to it with Ukraine, which I believe we have more than fulfilled our obligations. You don't hear a peep about James Baker's 1990 commitment, his not 1 inch commitment to the NATO wouldn't expand 1 inch beyond Germany. No discussion of that.
Yep.
Against the backdrop of the reality that we face, which is we are driving Russia further into China's arms as we arm Ukraine, further strengthening what I see as the single greatest military threat that the United States certainly has faced since World War II. You could make a case that the United States has ever faced if you actually look at where this could be going. And yet we are actually the ones responsible for driving that Russia-China military alliance. And
yeah, especially when we, I think, in my view, I think it was premature to launch out sanctions. It's like you let out all your cards in one go. Like it's like you're playing a video game and you hit them with your best move up front. And then when Russia realized, hey, I'm still standing, boom, you lost all your leverage. And that's what happened. Now the United States are sitting here in the background like, okay, we're just going to keep funneling more weapons to Ukraine. They kind of put themselves in that position. I don't know if it was by intention or incompetence. I don't know what it was. But in my view, I was like, yo, why y'all levy such heavy sanctions to the point where now you make Russia stand 10 toes down in their decisions? Like, oh, okay, F it, you want to sanction me? I'm going to continue with the war. Right? Because Russia wanted, here's some kind of the geopolitics stuff. Russia didn't send enough people in there to really take over the place. It was enough soldiers to occupy Kiev. And you see it. They already pushed them back. They're already in the Donbas region, whatever they're at. And it's a stalemate right now. Right? And you see videos, there's videos out there, people vacationing in Ukraine, right? While soldiers are dying. We're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, right? They don't want peace. The dude in Ukraine is like, yo, we're going to push Russia all the way back. We're going to take back Crimea. And he's saying all this rah-rah stuff. He taking photo shoots with Vogue. I'm like, yeah, this Ukraine president has a lot of time in his hands being part of a war. And this is why I think a lot of Americans want the war to end. Like, we just see it as like, yo, this is justification for people to spend money on some frivolous thing, because at the end of the day, war gives you an excuse to command more power, command more control. I think that's why government likes war. And that's why they don't want to let it go. And in a trade-off for that, Russia's being pushed into an alliance with China, right? Now we feel threatened with Taiwan. Russia and China are trying to build a new world reserve currency competitor with their BRICS movement. Bruh, all this happened because of what? Long time ago, when Putin became president of Russia, an ambassador for USA made a commitment and said, hey, we're not going to step 1 foot towards the east, right? We're not going to make Ukraine part of NATO. We're not going to let these other... And what they started doing, minute the next administration came, they started putting Germany in NATO. NATO just kept expanding towards what? The east. Putin's like, yo, what you doing? Y'all made a commitment to me 5 presidents ago. Sorry, I'm exaggerating. 3-4 presidents ago that you wouldn't step foot in the east. And look what you guys are doing. This is why they fight. This is why he essentially felt, okay, this last ditch effort, I'm going to start a war then. So you can kind of say we kind of played, we try to, like, I guess, provoke them into doing it. But hey, you know, this is geopolitics for you, right? But America, we better hope we come out on top on this, because if we don't, if we lose our status as the world reserve currency, we're going to be in a depression, not a recession, a depression. Because a lot of our inflation, the reason why it's not as now hyperinflation hasn't hit us yet is because the world still see value in our currency, right? And that BRICS movement is almost economic warfare at this point. But hey, I digress. I'm rambling too long.
And so one of my advantages is that I am not, some people say, well, you don't have foreign policy experience. And I'll say, yes, I don't have foreign policy experience. And that may actually be an advantage in bringing a rational American.
So you're not responsible for the war in Iraq.
Nope.
Yeah,
that's a bad thing.
Yeah, well, I think we could debate whether it's a bad thing or not. But if you break the car, you don't turn over the keys to the guy who broke it.
Exactly.
That's what I would say. And so, I think that we are on our way to Ukraine turning into another Iraq or another Vietnam all over again. Except this time I think it could be worse because there's nuclear weapons at issue. There's an alliance with China, an economy that we depend on for our modern way of life.
Taiwan.
That's also at issue. And the irony is, I think a lot of people today believe that somehow world leaders make their decisions by analogy. So Xi Jinping is going to say, oh, well, because Vladimir Putin walked away with a piece of Ukraine that he didn't have, that somehow means that by analogy, I'm going to be judged more favorably if I go after Taiwan and walk away with a piece of Taiwan that I didn't have, when I basically don't think that's how autocrats or any global leader should, or at least does, make decisions. To the contrary, I think what's actually more likely to happen is we're going to put Xi Jinping in a more likely position to go after Taiwan sooner, because he knows that Russia's in his camp, because they're in a more solid alliance.
There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, yo, geopolitics is like chess, bro. Like you have to understand, okay, how they're gonna respond. If I do this, what's gonna happen? Do I consider all the options? Am I comfortable with the worst case scenario if I decide to do this action? If it's yes, they move forward. Right, this is why he hasn't. I think this is why China hasn't moved forward towards Taiwan. He tested the waters. Hey, I'm gonna fly some planes over there, see how America will respond. Right? Oh, America's capitulating to me. They don't recognize Taiwan as a country. Good. They slowly win this narrative game. China has TikTok filtering crap to the American population, making the younger generation dumber while they make their kids smarter. Right? It seemed like China's going for the long play. And I think some of the ways we can fight this stuff is by content creation, by changing our content consuming habits. But that's too much discipline for the American people to actually do, right? But I digress. Let's continue, though.
Yeah, on Taiwan, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's mostly right. Now, my view is, this is also another heresy that I think have recently managed to cross last night, which is that I think our commitments to go to war in that situation, or to at least even militarily engage in that situation, should change if it's before or after we have semiconductor independence in this country.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I think so. Right?
So I agree
why
with
we
you
say
completely.
that.
But for people who aren't following this, explain what you mean.
Yeah. So this is a long history here, but for historical circumstances that are long and unfortunate, we are dependent on a tiny island nation off the southeast coast of China for our entire modern way of life. Right? These lights wouldn't work. The phones in our pockets wouldn't work.
Yo, that's crazy.
TV screens and cameras wouldn't work.
That's crazy, bro. Like, imagine that. Like, something so crucial, you're relying on another country to produce it for you and then give it to you. Right? I think the worst mistake that America ever done was stop being a producing country and became a consumer country. Right? We import a lot of stuff, then we export. And Trump, this is where I kind of agree with Trump when he wanted to bring manufacturing back, is that he wanted America to become a producer again. Hey, let's start selling to other countries. Let's start making our own products. If I look at something, it's going to say made in China, made in Indonesia, made in this, made in Vietnam. Like, all our other products are made outside of the U.S. That's because of what? We shipped our manufacturing outside of the country. And the country lost its ability to what? Sustain itself. Our country became what? Reliant on other countries. This is the problem with globalism in a way. This is the trade-off you make when you want to be part of a globalist economy. You become dependent on other things. That's how China became so powerful. China used globalism to his advantage, right? China exported goods and services globally, but it kept all its consumerism nationally, right? That's what China is a nationalist country, essentially. Hey, we do things in the best interest of China. It's not in the best interest of China to keep buying stuff more than it's buying its own products. Oh, we're going to let Tesla come in, let the American company come into the China's market, right? Create competition, force the Chinese companies to compete with the American brand until the Chinese companies become just as good as the American brand. And then we sanction the American company and we kick the American out of our market, keeping all his intellectual properties in our country. China's been doing this game all the time, right? And what these politicians do? No, we're going to keep, this is not how you do trade arrangements. Oh, this is not how you do foreign policy. It's a give and take. All it seemed like is China keeps tick. That's why Trump, when he started putting those tariffs on China, I was like, yo, yeah, get some money back for it. I don't know why Obama signed this bad trade deal. This guy don't know how to do business. Trump said that about Obama's little trade arrangement with China. China's not paying enough for all the products they're importing into America. He needs to pay more tariffs. But people don't like the guy, right? Now they had to pass this CHIP Act so they can start building microchips in America because they realize how reliant they are on Taiwan, right? And Vivek's going to go into a dialogue, and I'm going to let it go off for like 2 minutes, where he starts kind of telling you, like, China can have us by the you-know-what if they take over Taiwan. Let's take a look.
If it weren't for leading edge semiconductors that are manufactured by basically one company and a set of companies around them, TSMC on Taiwan, that power our entire modern way of life. That's just a hard fact. How we got here, it's a long story. I think it's sad that we are where we are, but we are where we are. China has two reasons to want to go for Taiwan. Okay, one is a nationalistic reason, which is that back in 1949, they had this complicated civil war. Chiang Kai-shek, went to Taiwan and claimed that that was actually where the real Republic of China was based. And Mao Zedong said, no, it's the Communist Party of China out of Beijing. And for the longest time, actually, the U.S. and the UN recognized actually the real China as being run out of Taipei, but at some point along the way switched to saying, no, it's actually run out of Beijing. And so there's this nationalistic thing going on that's super complicated history over there. But there's a more modern motivation for Xi Jinping, which is, wait a minute. If I now have control over that island, I have control over the entire United States.
Yep.
Because I now have the economic leverage to get to a deal that the U.S. wouldn't have said yes to. And I think...
Imagine losing the ability to make iPhones, right? To make computers. Yo, our cybersecurity is donezo if he gets Taiwan. This is why both Joe Biden was willing to threaten China with war if they try to take over Taiwan, if they try to set foot in Taiwan. Because they know that's what's going to happen. It's going to cripple America. And America, that's why I'm saying, yo, this is, let Vivek cook.
What Xi Jinping is going for is the basic deal where he says, I get to make your stuff as long as I get all of your IP and everything else in return. And right now, if he says that to the U.S., we're not going to go for that deal. But if he's squatting on the semiconductor supply chain, well, then that's how we ultimately get to parity, consummate the codependent relationship. And I think that's step one of a broader conquest of the modern West.
How hard would it be to achieve, as you said, semiconductor independence in the United States?
It's not going to be easy, but I'm confident that with focus, I can lead us there by the end of my first term in office. And my basic rule of thumb...
And I think one of the good things Vivek does is he's able to articulate and explain his plan. What problems he's seeing, how he's going to address them, right? He kind of explains the motives of, hey, possible actions that another nation can take. That's why I said geopolitics is almost like chess. And at this point, I think our political class right now is too incompetent to even understand it. That's why Trump did so well. People are like, yo, he art of the deal. Because Trump had actual skills, business skills, negotiation skills. And he leveraged that in foreign policy. These politicians don't know nothing. All politicians know how to do is, I scratch my back, you scratch yours. But what if the other politician you scratching your back has more leverage than you? He can be like, yo, screw your deal. I'm gonna keep importing my products in your country. I'm not gonna take any products from you. And we're supposed to sit there because we want access to the Chinese market. And this is how we get caught up in these bad arrangements that don't serve or help America and its people. This is how we go. We're part of NATO, right? We pay more money into NATO. All the other countries don't pay as much money as we do in NATO. But when ish hit the fan, American troops supposed to show up in Ukraine and help them win the war. Right? This is the kind of talk Trump was, even Trump exposed. And it showed that the current establishment is too incompetent to actually drive America forward. And I think this is why I think I'm kind of done with career politicians. This is kind of one of the reasons why I want Ron DeSantis to stay in Florida. But if he ends up being the guy, I'll still vote for him. But, it's going to be bittersweet as a Floridian. Right? This is why I'm incentivized to vote for anyone but Ron. All Trump has to do is say, if you vote for me, Ron stays 2 more years. And, hey, I always joke around with my wife. And I say, hey, don't let the deciding vote for the primary come down to Florida. Because Ron going to lose. Ron is going to lose, bro. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
On this one, Tucker, is just to be very practical, looking at this from American interests. I do not consent to Xi Jinping holding an economic gun to our head and lording that over for the next 100 years of the future of the United States. But if we're no longer dependent on that tiny island nation, then I will not send our sons and daughters to die over somebody else's nationalistic dispute.
How
That's where I'm at
difficult
on
is it to predict? I mean, it's interesting, and you said there's a complex history that I'm not familiar with behind it, but how complex is it to build your own semiconductor?
It's complicated because a lot of it relies on know-how. So it's not just raw production capability, but it's the know-how of how you actually make it. And so I think that requires pulling people from, TSMC in Taiwan to the United States. And I think that that's something that we should be intensely focused on right now. There's new, giant projects, manufacturing projects in Arizona, near where I live, actually in my home state of Ohio, that are going to be steps forward in that direction. I also think that, like it or not, a relationship with South Korea and Japan is going to have to play a role in speeding up our semiconductor self-reliance as well. Samsung is the next best leader. It's not even an American company. After TSMC, there's like a big jump down. Then it's Samsung. Then there's a big jump down. There's Intel and everybody else here.
Damn.
So I think that it's going to require, and I don't like multilateral trade agreements, but if we're going to have to do them, let's keep it bilateral. Bilateral agreements with Japan, with South Korea. That's a big part of what's going to be required. And so my view is, let's think about first term in office as it relates to this dimension of foreign policy. End the Ukraine war on terms that help pull Russia out of China's hands. That's going to require rebuilding a lot of trust. I think I'm up for that job. And I believe that Putin can trust us to follow our self-interest as long as we trust him to follow his. Reopen economic relations with Russia, freeze the current lines of control, make a permanent commitment that NATO will not admit Ukraine to NATO. But in return, weaken, if not disband, that Russia-China alliance. I'd get India back on side. And, if there's a guy who's going to rebuild trust with India, it better be a guy with the name Vivek Ramaswamy who might be up for that task. But, getting India on side to say, you know what, we're going to be making sure that in a conflict situation in Taiwan, that we're at least on side with the United States.
So his whole foreign policy is to pretty much break up that little BRICS movement that's been going on. And I kind of agree with how he's articulating his plan. Yeah, end the war, right? Disincentivize NATO from using Ukraine. Push Russia away from China so China doesn't feel emboldened to take Taiwan. And as that's happening, let's be barkily sufficient away from Taiwan so that we were less coupled to outside economies and outside countries. I agree. I think that's a valid policy position to have. And I think that the debates are going to be really interesting when that becomes when it becomes more prominent. But I digress.
But then more importantly, get semiconductor self-sufficiency in the United States, reduce our economic dependence on China. If we're there by the end of my first term, by the end of 2028, the stakes are now just a lot lower with respect to what's actually happening in Taiwan. And if, is it preferable for China to annex Taiwan even after that scenario? No, probably not. But that's a different bar for whether or not we're going to actually be willing to send our sons and daughters to die over it. And in the meantime, there's one aspect of our national defense that surprisingly nobody's talking about, Tucker, which is actually our national defense of the homeland, where we have actually badly missed the plot for super EMP attacks, cyber attacks, nuclear defense. We helped Israel build an Iron Dome. How about an equivalent of an Iron Dome for the United States and our own homeland? And so that's where I'm focused in my first term. On foreign policy, if I can get us to semiconductor independence, if I can get us to significantly reduced, if not total economic independence from China, weaken the Russia-China alliance by ending the war in Ukraine, that actually keeps China at bay from not having an economic gun to our head over our modern way of life, at which point we then have a different set of commitments where after that, we're going to be in good shape no matter what happens. And so I wasn't, planning to get into some foreign policy detour, but that's the way I'm thinking about it first.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, bro. Like, I kind of like that policies, and this is what I'm saying. I think DeSantis and Vivek, the policy thing, I think there's not much difference between. I think Vivek has based on principles, he has a wider vision of how he can set America back in a stronger position, especially internationally, right? Because he's a fan of protectionism, but against China, against people who can be a military threat to America, right? And I don't think it's smart to arm an enemy essentially, or a rival in the, because China's number 2 right now, with having such dependency on their market, their economy, their manufacturing, right? And I think we need to try to decouple our reliance on China. And I agree with Vivek on this. And I don't know the other people's position on this. I know Trump, he wanted big tariffs on China. I don't know if he has like a long-term vision where you set up America in a way where it'll transition away from China. I think bringing American jobs back is a great first step. But I think so far everything that Vivek said right here, I'm all for it. I think that's a good vision. Make our microchips at home, become less economically dependent on China, so China can't use it as leverage to have us capitulate or dance to their whim, right? And I think in the next segment, he's going to start talking about improving our own national defense, because we're vulnerable to, like he mentioned, EMT attacks, cyber attacks. And I think the fact that liberals hate investing money into the military is a big problem about that is that the only way you can be safe is if you can deter people from attacking you. And I think a good defense is a good offense as well, right? And I think they're going to get more into it in this interview. So let's get back into it.
That all of that makes sense.
You think so?
Well, I'm not sure what is controversial about any of that.
Well, I think what's controversial about it is they say
how
weak.
far those priority. It's weak.
That's what I've heard yesterday. Yeah.
Damn.
From whom? Well, from a lot of Republicans actually.
And Democrats too. Democrats like, oh, don't you want to win the war? Remember when Trump had that famous town hall with that lady from CNN? I forgot her name already. I just want people to stop dying, and the crowd went wild over it. That's how the elite see. They see us, our kids, people who are gonna go and get drafted for this war that they want to wage as pawn to some bigger gain, right? They don't see, oh, these are not lives. No, they die for a good cause, for us gaining more power, for us having spreading democracy across the land. They died for our globalist vision. No, this is my thoughts. If I had to die in a war, I'd rather die in a war where I'm defending my land. Like, let's say someone trying to invade Florida. I'd rather die defending the soil that I grew up on than dying on some foreign land that I'd never been to. I don't know nothing about these people, right? And I think a lot of American men think this way. Hey, I'd rather die at home defending my home than dying for some war to expand the American empire, right? The Americans' woke empire, right? And that's how a lot of people around the world see us. Because, we got Biden and the WEF, the World Economic Forum, out here trying to preach, we know what's publicly good for everybody. The American people are too egotistical. They need to be more humble to accept the direction from their better men. They're better. And I think that's egotistical of the World Economic Forum to think that they know what's best for us and the environment. But, I digress. Let's get back into it.
And is there a dumber group? I mean, than the foreign policy Republicans? I mean, I'm not talking about Republican voters. I mean, the members of Congress, the low IQ guys from, including your state, I hate to say it, Texas, who make their entire career about seeming strong and quoting Reagan, and under whose watch the country has become demonstrably weaker.
It has become, and that
doesn't lead to strength, actually. Where are we now?
And the funny part
with
is
our transgender army, like seriously.
People also miss this, Tucker, and this makes me uncomfortable as they get very upset when I say this. I think there's a chance that if we enter war with nuclear allied Russia and China, the United States as we know it, we may take a risk of it ceasing to exist.
Of course.
Ooh, hey, I want to see how Vivek does in the debates, but I'm pretty sure someone's gonna attack Vivek for this. Oh, you saying that if we go into war, America get eradicated? That's being practical, and that's not being that's being humble. That's being recognized that, hey, like, I could lose, right? Someone who think they can't lose will lose because they'll make mistakes, right? Their hubris will lead to their own downfall, right? So, hey, bro. That takes humility. I think that's someone seeing stuff in clearly that, hey, we're not invincible here. If we make mistakes, we can lose what we have here. And I think having somebody that recognizes the risk and the possibility of losing, this is why I like Vivek. This is why Vivek's my ideal candidate, and I'll support him until he drops out of the race. But until then, hey, I don't care if he's the only, and he only get 20% of the vote. I don't care if he only get 30% of the vote. I don't care if he never beats Trump. I'm supporting this guy until he say, hey, I concede. I nominate this person, whoever he endorsed. That's where my vote going. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you appreciate that. That's good because many people are like, what are you talking about? The United States ceased to exist. No, I actually think,
Well, in a nuclear conflict, yes.
well, because we don't have nuclear defense capabilities.
No.
Valid.
National defense has not been about defense for a very long time.
Imagine that. All it's been about is conquering, gaining new wars, gaining new territory, trying to be part of this globalist internationalism. Oh, we're going to be the bodyguards of NATO and the European Union. That's what national defense has been about. We're defending Ukraine's borders. We're not defending our own borders, right? National defense in name only. I digress. What Nino? That's what you say. NIO. National. Whatever. I'm messing up. But hey, I digress. Let's continue.
Right.
And so, by the way, super EMP capabilities take out our electric grids. We have, 60 Chinese transformers that are in the midst, nodes in our own electric grid. They could shut down our modern way of life with that. You want to talk about actual cyber attack capabilities? We're better on offense. We have no defensive capabilities.
That's crazy.
And so, when I think about a modern foreign policy vision, I'd revive a modern Monroe Doctrine. You don't mess with the United States on our own soil. We are not okay with a Chinese spy balloon flying over half our country. We are not okay. We do not consent to a Chinese spy base off the southeast coast of the United States or in Cuba spying on the southeast corridor of the United
they
States.
did do that with Cuba. I forgot about that. I wasn't paying much attention. Like geopolitics is I say is my weakest area of like the political conflict. So hearing this, I'm like, yo, we gotta pay attention to, China not playing, dog. China, Russia not playing. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into it.
We're not okay with intentionally pumped fentanyl, the raw materials, literally coming, I'm not making this up, from Wuhan to Mexican drug cartels that are intentional.
Bro, China's playing the long game. I'm starting to see it, bro. I think China's like, yo, in 10 years, America is done. We got them on TikTok. We got them acting like NPCs online. We're funneling fentanyl using the drug cartels in Mexico, killing off their young men. Oh my goodness, bro. Right? Using TikTok to make their kids stupider, and we using TikTok to make our kids smarter. Bro, if America doesn't take control of its own culture, this is what's gonna happen, bro. It's insane, bro. It's like China's trying to play like, yo, in 10 years, they're all going to be speaking Mandarin.
Being pumped across our southern border as part of really a one-sided opium war. No, we're not okay with that, or with interference in the Western Hemisphere, or with China having control over the Panama Canal, something that people forget as well. No, we're not okay with that, but that is also our top priority. Protect the homeland and the interests of citizens here at home. That's how America is strong and actually leads on the global stage.
Exactly.
And so the irony is, at least
it's let's stop playing this globalist game and play this populist game. Let's play nationalist. Let's do what's in the best interest of our country. Because what's in the best interest of our country is not necessarily what's best for the world, what's best for NATO, what's best for the Paris Accord. Right? I'm tired of us being second. It's time someone put us first. And I think Trump and Vivek, not so much Trump, but at the end of the day, Trump's vengeance is kind of our vengeance, right? Because end of the day, we're tired of the deep state. And if Trump has the motivation to shrink the government, fire everybody and their mom out of the government, right? Use it as, because this is why I think the Democrats are focused so heavily on indicting Trump with something. It's because they legitimately are scared that if this man gets back into power, he's going to have I generally believe that. I generally believe that they know, there's articles out there talking about that, like these articles from these left wing journalists saying if Trump gets back in office, he would exact revenge on the government, on his political rivals. And we're like, hey, if that's the only way we can get accountability on the Democrats, hey, Trump, go get your revenge. Who cares if he's impeaching? Who cares if he's investigating Biden because Biden did it to him? Biden needs some accountability. Biden's been corrupt for a long time and no one wants to investigate him. If Trump's the only one motivated enough to do it, that's a vote for Trump. This is why a lot of people want Trump to win. Jonathan Field says, does Trump really want vengeance? What do you think? Bruh, imagine this. If I was Trump and every time I'm trying to do something, people keep hitting me with indictments, every time their boy Joe Biden stumbles on his words, do something negative, they indict me the next day, bruh. I'm don't let me go into office. I'm a petty person. Knowing Trump, knowing the way Trump is, given Trump's personality, I think Trump is trying to play it cool right now because he's trying to be more marketable to the general public, But I think when his butt getting in the office, he look left, he look right, he like, yo, these are my last 4 years in office, bruh. This man's gonna take vengeance, bruh. Now it depends on who he elects. Obviously, his cabinets will matter, but they kind of showed their cards already. Like the Democrat establishment showed their cards, the Republican establishment showed their cards already. Trump knows who to trust and who not to trust. So he knows, yo, you're fired. Like him and Mitch McConnell don't see eye to eye. Remember, the big reason why Republicans lost 2022 election is because Mitch McConnell wasn't properly supporting mega Republicans. That's not a slight against Trump, bruh. If Trump gets in office, bro, the establishment are legit. I think the establishment, this is just my view. I legitimately think the establishment is scared of Donald Trump getting back into office just because of that. Because they're going to go, oh, I can't play two-face with him. Lindsey Graham can't come back and be like, hey, I can't act. He can no longer ask for an endorsement from Donald Trump. He asked for an endorsement for Donald Trump in, I believe, 2022 to keep his office. And what he do with it? Stab him right in the back. Because he's praying Donald Trump don't win. That's why they're backing DeSantis. That's one reason I think that. The reason they were backing DeSantis is because they know, okay, if DeSantis win, I could still be in good terms with DeSantis. But if Trump win, I lose all my power and influence in the party. Right? And I think this is why the indictments keep coming. Because they're like, nah, we don't want this man back in office. He might actually weaponize the DOJ back on us. And right now, who's more motivated to do that? Trump. Now, Vivek, I believe Vivek is going to be the reformer, right? Like if he gets in, he's going to reform the government, whatever. Fire, because he already said that he wants to give executive power to the president to have the ability to unilaterally fire government agencies, which is a good point. I agree with that stance. But Trump, bro, I that's why I'm conflicted. But idealistically, Vivek's my guy. Because I read his books long before he running for president. But Trump, he has the public sentiment of people who just like, yo, they put this 81-year-old man, can't put two sentences together. They want me to keep running for this guy. Yo, Trump, the most satisfying thing, I think. And look, I'm the first one to admit it. We humans, we're not 100% logical creatures, okay? We're thinking creatures and we're feeling creatures. Imagine that feeling if Donald Trump wins 2024 and you see liberal media crying, the leftists hollering into the air like wolves, the Democratic establishment shaking in their boots, the Republican establishment going, damn, we let this man win again. Bro, the satisfaction I think the movement will feel if Trump wins, I think that's hard to turn away from, right? That's why I say I have to go like with Vivek idealistically. Like, yo, I know the temptation with Trump, but that's why Trump has such support, because people feel that they're like, damn, this man, they after this man, they don't let this man breathe. They so desperate to get a mugshot of this man in prison. They're so desperate to humiliate this man. All right? That's what Vivek has to kind of go against. It's like he has to calm everyone down and say, hey, look, guys, we have to be rational about this. I think that's going to be Vivek's job. We got to be rational about this, guys. This is something bigger than vengeance, guys. Right? But, hey, the GOP debates will really decide and see who can sway the American people to their side, right? And I think Vivek got a great shot, but hey, right now it looks like it's going to be Trump, but I believe in my guy. So let's continue with the video.
The Reagan version of this was, yes, all of that projection peace through strength, but strategic defense initiative, nuclear defense here at home. Now we're in the worst of all worlds where you have a generation of people who vaguely remember the slogans and feel like they want to puff their chest but can't really do it super confidently, so they're like doing it as like a second language. Well, altogether, forgetting about the actual defense of the homeland, it's even worse because the peace through strength part, well, the strength part actually provokes that which we're not even prepared to handle back.
Jonathan Field says, heck yeah, Kenny, Trump 2024. Look, This is why I've always been conflicted, bro. Like, idealistically, we say, yo, Vivek. But Vivek is like too reasonable, right? Trump, you like sometimes, like it's just a reality. Like, what speaks more to people, right? There's a reason why Democrats are able to win elections with nonsensical policies. Democrats understand the appeal of an emotional message, and Trump has that. Like, that's why his support is so almost cult-like, right? I'm just recognizing reality, though. This is what Vivek has to go against, and I believe Vivek can give a great pitch to lead us down a more rational track. But hey, no one's gonna complain if Trump wins. That's why I'm trying to say. I digress.
Home. And so I end up talking to a lot of neocons actually in terms of, bolstering me up because they don't have the right strategic vision, but they know all like the names of like, what an Ohio class, SSGN versus SSBN is, and I don't know these things.
All the war porn, they love that.
I mean, I wasn't born with this knowledge, but I'm going to be U.S. president. Yeah. I better darn well and trained to know it. And so I'm probably talking to more liberal hegemony neocon people training me, not because I'm taking their views. I deeply disagree with them, but they, know the lexicon. And so, I want to put myself in a position where it's easily dismissible. This guy doesn't know what an Ohio class SSGN versus a SSBN is. Well, okay, well now I do.
I don't know what that is.
Sound
like a war plane.
That one under our belt, but it doesn't matter. You're missing the plot if you're actually failing to actually advance.
Is there a single neocon with a happy personal life? Like imagine
I haven't drilled into it.
Dinner at Bill Kristol's house, the misery. Do you know what I mean? Like it does seem like I don't want to psychoanalyze here, but it does seem like their project has nothing to do with helping the United States in any way, and it is psychosexual or something. They're for war as long as other people fight it. I mean, it's like a syndrome. I've never seen anything like it.
There is a certain titillation you see when they're using words like Virginia class this or Ohio class that or tomahawks facing, there's a certain type of satisfaction.
If your wife, it's easy to want to wage war when you don't have to fight it. It's easier to pick a fight when you don't have to take the blows, right? And I think that's what's going on with our little our political class right now is that they don't. It's almost feel like they don't even care about America. They just care about wielding their power. All right, and I don't know. This is why you don't trust government, right? Government says, "Oh, we're doing the best for you. We're here to protect you. Oh, it's in America's benefit to project strength in the national geopolitical landscape." But at what cost, though? American lives, our sons, our children. Nah, I don't think America want that. It's easy for you to say your kids can dodge the draft. My kids can't dodge the draft. That's crazy. All right. Toby Chaser 62 says, I'm 60, so I may be biting myself in the butt, but Vivek is 38. Trump is 70-ish. It's time to move on. Hey, bro, I have a video out about possibly an age limit because I just found out like the oldest serving politician right now in our government is 90 years old. Bro, my grandma died at 96 years old. This lady, I'm baffled at it. It's a Monday video, sneak peek. Right, but let's continue with the video.
Respected you probably wouldn't have to talk that way. So no, I think everything you said is self-evidently sensible, and it's hard to. By the way, if you took a poll on what you just said, your defense priorities as you just articulated, I can't imagine you get under 90% for that. Like, what? How could you disagree with that?
But I haven't taken a poll. But it'll be interesting to find out.
It's so obvious.
If I'm wrong, maybe I'll get wiped out in the election. And I'm okay with that.
I want to play, and you're busy. You got to go campaign. But I just want to play one. I want to play a soundbite, a SOT, as we say, from you on the campaign trail. This is an exchange, which I think just says a lot, where you're approached by a self-described pansexual. Here's what happened next.
I was just wondering, what were your opinions on the LGBTQ plus community?
Well, I don't think it's one community.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, how could it be? Just mashed together an alphabet soup. Trans is fundamentally in tension with gay, if you ask me. But what's your opinion?
I am personally a pansexual, so I was just wondering what your views on same-sex couples were.
I don't have a negative view of same-sex couples, but I do have a negative view of a tyranny of the minority. So I think that in the name of protecting against a tyranny of the majority, and there are times in this country's history where we have had a tyranny of the majority,
we have now, in the name of protecting against tyranny of the majority, created a new tyranny of the minority. And I think that that's wrong. I don't think that somebody who's religious should be forced to officiate a wedding that they disagree with.
I agree with that. I don't believe that someone who think they're something that they're not, and they want me to validate their false conclusions about who they are and making laws to punish me if I don't go along with their false perception. I don't think that that's right either, right? Your rights end where another person's begin, right? If you need my consent for you to feel validated, that's not a right. That's a privilege. It's a privilege if I want to accept your pronouns. That's a privilege. That's not a right. A right is something you can do. You can think you're a woman. That's fine. You can think however you want to think about yourself. But the moment you try to require me to do something for your benefit, for your obligation, that's a privilege. I'm not required to do that. But you try to make a privilege into law, and this is where we get into this fight with government. Government seems to not be able to recognize what is a privilege and what is a right. And I think it's coming from this culture of entitlement that we have facilitated for so long in our society. And I think this is one of the biggest reasons why I like Vivek policy position. I think Ron DeSantis also has this policy position of this defunding or removing the Department of Education, because I realize public schools transmit values to our kids. And my argument has always been, what kind of values do we want our kids to have? Because the values, whatever values these people were pushing into our kids throughout the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, it's what led to this culture that we have today. This open sexuality, sex ed, introducing sexuality to our kids and teenagers, incentivizing these shows in Hollywood that's overly sexualized, pushing a certain scene. Oh, you're supposed to do this in college. Lead to this debauchery culture we have today, where people can't even take criticism anymore, right? The meme, I'm literally shaking, trigger warnings in college. All this dumb stuff came up in college, right? And the public school push people, oh, go to college, go to college. College at this point has become an indoctrination camp. In college, it has a heavy liberal bias, 13-1. For every conservative that's in college, there's 13 liberal professors to outnumber them. And you wonder why now these kids graduating from college, going to corporate America, now you see why corporate America is becoming woke. Why they pushing ESG. Why they making feminist marketing campaigns. Why you think they care about LGBTQ. Why Gen Z is arguably the gayest generation, with 20% of their population identifying with LGBTQ. Right? Transmission of values. And this is why I like Vivek. Vivek, I think from a long-term perspective, he has the solution. Hey, we need to start switching what values we transmit to the future generations of Americans. Because if we keep going down this road, bruh, we're heading down a path of self-destruction, right? The Bible already warned you. We have an illustration of this already. Solomon and Gomorrah. Rome, if you want to go historical. We're going down that same track record. And if we don't turn course soon, we'll end up in the same result as well. But I digress.
I don't think somebody who is a woman who's worked really hard for her achievements should be forced to compete against a biological man in a swim competition. I don't think that somebody who's a woman that respects her bodily autonomy and dignity should be forced to change clothes in a locker room with a man. That's not freedom, that's oppression. And so I believe that we live in a country where free adults should be free to dress how they want, behave how they want, and that's fine. But you don't become oppressive by foisting that on others. And that especially includes kids, because kids aren't the same as adults.
It's just a beautiful answer in so many ways, but I just want to parse your initial answer. 3 parts about it I love. She comes up and says, what are your opinions on the LGBT community? First, you question the premise of the question itself. How is it a community? Trans is fundamentally in tension with gay, as you say. That's not a community.
I agree with that.
Second, you're completely confident.
I agree, Toby.
Yourself. And third, you say, what's your opinion? And you throw it back to her. But to the first thing, trans is fundamentally in tension with gay. I have not heard anybody say that in public. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's just starting with the L and the G. Most lesbians don't like gay men and vice versa. But then now you keep adding.
I don't think you can say that. It's too true.
And he's sort of like further.
There was a story of a woman filing a rape charge against a transgender woman, aka a fake woman, who in reality was a man, and she got tricked into dating him And when she called it rape, because at the end of the day, I guess they had a sexual encounter and she didn't like it. She was kind of forced into it. The department, the courthouse was like, oh, we're addressing him as her. And she was pissed. She was like, no, this can't be right. They were telling her, I don't know what was going on. But what he said is right. They don't like men at all. Gay men don't like women at all. And women and lesbians don't like gay people at all. Right?
Further start playing this out.
Wait.
Trans is this totally weird separate thing that's like, so like you're just like mashing this like alphabet soup just to create an us versus them destruction of modern order.
Sorry, I should say I someone in the studio is nodding. Who would know? What you just said is true.
It's the truth. I mean, really. And so the truth is, let's just take, I mean, we could have a lot of fun with this one, but just take some of the suppositions here and see if this logically makes sense, right? Like one of the suppositions in the gay rights movement, which, you know, I'm totally open to this, but it's just partly of how we created gay rights in this country, is that the sex of the person you're attracted to is hardwired on the day you're born, even though there is no gay gene.
Bruh.
That's
Yo, this is, I don't even think I have a controversial opinion. I just don't care, right? I don't care until you make me care, right? And I think this is the worst thing that gay people hate to hear is when people don't care about if they're gay or not. I remember I had a coworker of mine. He came out and said, oh, I'm gay. And I just went, oh, okay. I didn't care. Like, as long as you don't make it a problem, like my problem, I don't care. Right. And now, you know, I think this is where this transgender stuff comes up. Like, people don't care about if you're transgender, if you think you're a man or you think you're a woman, even if you're a man or even if you're a woman. They start caring when you start saying, hey, you got to address me as this. Imagine I say, hey, everyone got to address me as handsome and beautiful. Bruh. Imagine someone can make a law where if you don't address them as your highness, my majesty, he could send you to jail. It's an ego trip at this point. Someone made a good point in one of my comment sections. I forgot a long time ago when I reacted to a video with the Harsh twins. They made the argument that, yo, transgenderism in his mind was another form of narcissism. And I'm starting, it makes sense. I kind of agree with that statement. I think transgender is a form of narcissism. Imagine trying to make the whole world abide by your self-perception. That's craziness. That's crazy. But I digress.
Now, if you make it one movement, the LGBT movement, that's the same movement that also now says that your own sex is completely fluid over the course of your life, even though there is a definitive sex chromosome. Like, you can't believe these two things at the same time. Like, fundamentally,
nonsensical.
It's nonsensical. And so that's what it reveals what's going on, Tucker, is that these are cult-like belief systems, right? Because if it's a religious cult, then you don't have to, you don't have any obligation to logic if you're subscribing to a religion. And the worst religions are the ones that fail to recognize themselves as religions. I think religion can be a great thing. You and I are both pro-religion, pro-faith, if we recognize that we're actually exercising faith.
Yeah.
But the most dangerous religions of all are those that claim to be secular but are actually religious in their conviction. And one of the ways you can smoke out that it's a religion is just these inherent tensions. Then you give it a flag, then you give it a symbology, you give it an idol. The first idol was not good enough, the rainbow flag. Then they had to make the trans flag, the upgraded version, the golden idol. They started with the silver one.
Yeah, and even CRT, this anti-racism movement, they made like almost George Floyd almost like a Jesus-like figure, right? If you dare question, if you dare assume that George Floyd wasn't an innocent man that happened to die at the hands, bruh, people will fight you over that. Naming streets after this man. Bruh. It's craziness, bro. I'm trying to rush through the video, so let's continue.
And so this is what this is about, is a form of idolatry in the trans flag that is a symbol of a broader religious conviction. It's kind of the same thing.
Bro, this is unpopular opinion. Apparently, it's an unpopular opinion. Toby62 says, I remember Rush Limbaugh going on about LGBTQ, and they got everything that they asked for, and they're still miserable. Bro, I mean, if you look at the stats, there's stats saying that like LGBTQ people are some of the most unhappiest people in the world. Like, especially if you're trans. Oh my God, y'all mental health is out of the charts, right? Liberals are more mentally unstable than conservatives. Like, if there was a poll out there, I forgot where I saw it. It was a YouGov poll talking about like liberals' self-satisfaction. Non-religious people are less happy than religious people, bro. Like. And I think the results speak for itself. I don't think I need to make an argument for why that is coherent, right? Religion gives you meaning, right? When you go through hard times, you subscribe meaning to it, right? But if you're non-religious and you go through hard times, you just end up being depressed, nihilistic, possibly, right? And in my view, religion existed to kind of counteract nihilism, hopelessness, meaninglessness. And that's a hard thing to fight. Even Nietzsche recognized that, yeah, nihilism is a big problem without God, right? But, you know, you got these non-religious people keep saying, oh, it's a good thing we're a circular society that only cares about our wants and needs. And we'll do anything to have it, even if it means at the destruction of the country itself. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
The thing you see in the climate movement actually is like, I kind of enjoy this because you get to the bottom of what's going on by exposing the illogic of it. Right? Like on the climate, there's a parallel for what's going on with LGBT with climate. You think two different issues. What are you talking about? Well, the same people who are antithetical to carbon emissions here in the United States are perfectly fine with shifting those carbon emissions to China, even though it was supposedly global warming that we're addressing.
Yeah.
The same people who are hostile to carbon emissions are also hostile to nuclear energy, which is the most productive form of carbon-free energy production known to man.
To me, clean energy, the only thing that makes sense to me is it seems like clean energy means less energy. It means you use less energy so that way they can use more energy, right? They want everyone, imagine this, they want the entire country to stop flying airplanes and stuff so they can fly airplanes. So they're like, look, we're net neutral, right? Sure, I'm flying private jet, but you're not flying private jet, so therefore we're not polluting the planet as much. It seems like that's what they want. They want carbon emissions to be only done by the elites because there are less of them. So they lower the carbon footprint of the world, of the society. It's just a context or an excuse to gain further control, right? Right? I'm done. Let's continue.
Again, you can't believe both of those things at once unless you're subscribing to a broader religious worldview. And I think that religion is actually, it's the same religion, whether it relates to the climate dogma, whether it relates to LGBTQIA plusism, whether it relates to racial wokeism.
Wow.
It's a broader vision that defines itself in opposition to the American vision, to the American way of life that says we are individuals.
Yep.
Individuals who are members of these units we call families.
Yep.
Families which are embedded in the substructure of this thing we call a nation.
Yep.
And a nation which exists under the broader blessing of God. Individual, family, nation, God. That is one worldview. Mm-hmm. And the thing we're describing here is an alternative worldview grounded in race, in gender, in sexuality, in climate.
It's almost like a worship of the self, right? Like, and this is why I push back against identity politics. This is why I hate identity politics. It's almost like, it was a quote I remember hearing from the Bible or something, is that they say if you don't worship God, you replace him with something else. And this is what happened. I think what's going on in our culture. Since we are in the most non-religious time in American history, right? This is the non-religious people outnumber religious people in our country. They replace that faith in something else. Oh, my race, my gender, my sexual orientation. That's what I lead with. They don't lead with idealism anymore. They lead in with biologically determined factors. Oh, I'm black. Race pride, right? Tribalism. They create these these tribes around these immutable traits that they're forever going to be, right? While if I align with America, hey, I'm an American, that's a more unifying idea because anyone can become an American. Not anyone can become black. You have to be born black. And I think this is why these politicians are trying to categorize people based on their race, gender, and possibly their sexual orientation, is because it creates this forever tribe where if someone goes against the norm, for instance, a black man decides he wants to be a conservative, you can smear that person and say, oh, you're not conforming to the tribe, right? And it plays into human psychology, human nature of being ostracized from the group, right? Because being ostracized from the group meant you had a higher risk of dying, right? They play into that, right? And I think that's what's going on in our politics today. Now, I don't think it's like, oh, like big brain, they meant to do this thing. It's just they saw what was working and they played into that. And I think this is what led into where we are today.
And one of the things that
Toby Chaser, I don't even think it's replacing men with God. Replacing God with man. I think it's replacing God with a worship of self, like self worship. I think that's what it is. Right? It's a narcissistic, self-centered way of looking at things, and you see it. That's how people vote. They don't ask what they can do for their country. They ask what the country can do for them, and the politicians essentially just bribes them, so that way the politicians get what they want. And I think that's what's going on right now, in my view. But I digress. Let's continue.
Feel for some of the people who subscribe to this religion. I somewhat felt for this woman, right? She wasn't, there are others like her. There's another one actually at the Iowa State Fair who had similar beliefs that did not comport him or her or they self, whatever this individual was, in the same civil manner that this woman did. He had a cowbell and it was ringing and was antithetical to having conversation. This woman, at least having a conversation, I kind of felt for her because what I saw in her eyes was she's not an evil person who's trying to be a crusader for some faith to put the other side out of business. Those people exist. She was just lost, actually. Right? I don't know if it was harder to see on the camera, but I was face to face with her. And when I see that, it's why I also thanked her. I said, thank you for being civil in your exchange. And I'll give you the same courtesy in return. I mean, she was early 20s, best my guess. She's lost. There's a void there.
Yeah.
Right? So I asked her the question back. There's a blank stare you get in a response. It's almost the same blank stare as if I ask most young people on a given day, what does it mean to be American?
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's why Vivek's a lot popular with people, like, a lot of the young kids like him, is because he gives a purpose, he gives a principle, right? Back in the day, right, at the time of founding, Thomas Jefferson wasn't Christian, whatever, but he hey, look, I see the Bible's point, they read the Bible, they study the Bible, right? And you get a sense of purpose from that. Like, hey, I got principles, right? And I want to live by those principles. But when you worship yourself, you only do what's necessary for yourself, right? You do the pain and pleasure principle, where evolutionary biologists will say. You do decisions that will give you pleasure and avoid decisions that gives you pain. But what if, for the better of the country, you had to go through some uncomfort, some pain, so that way everyone else can kind of do good? For instance, a man and his family. A man probably wouldn't want to work 60 hours a week to provide for his family, but he loves his family. He say, hey, I want to do what's best for my family so we all can live well. And for that to happen, it requires me to work 60 hours a week. That's what I must do. Even if I don't find pleasure in doing this, I do it because I believe it attributes to a greater purpose. But when you have people who don't strive for virtue, who don't strive for a greater purpose, they just do things that's convenient for themselves. And this is how you get socialism. Because all the government has to do is play into that. Oh, you guys don't have to work. We'll just take from the rich, who is always going to be a minority in a country. Right? Like I said, I think I brought a stat out. 20% of the top 20% of taxpayer contributes 90% of the tax dollars for the government. So imagine that. Imagine you had a vote. Hey, what do we do with this tax money? Redistribute wealth. Okay, let's vote on it. The money where the wealth is going to come from only comes from 20% of the population, but 80% of the population will benefit from that. Bro, it's the tyranny of the majority. This is why democracy. This is why the founding fathers did not make America a democracy. They made it a republic because they wanted people to be represented. All interests must be represented. Right? This is why. Right? This is why I push back against the electoral college. But yeah. You're gonna discuss the Elder Charlemagne interview. That was refreshing to see Elder discuss as equals. I did a video today on that. Actually, I did I saw that since this video won, I decided to do like a quick snippet. So it's an 18-minute video. You guys should see it on my channel. So yeah, I digress. Let's continue. I don't know why YouTube is not recommending my stuff. I'm noticing I'm low on views, but I keep pushing. So I'll probably post a reminder on my community post so you guys can see the video, but it's on my channel. I just did a little snippet of Larry Elder. I give my little reaction to Larry Elder's interview with Charlemagne, but I digress. Let's continue. I got to wrap this up.
Same blank stare. That's the void. It's like a deer in the headlights. And I think that this is our moment, our duty, our job as leaders It's the job of the next U.S. president. It might be the most important one of all. To fill that void with an answer to the question of, what does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be you? What does it mean to be an individual rather than riding a tectonic plate of group identity? What does it mean to be a member of a family, a nuclear family with a mother and a father?
I think one of the good things that America can benefit from in our education system, now that I'm thinking about it, is to teach philosophy. And I think one of the ways is to allow the Bible to be taught back in schools. And I think when when liberals came in and say, hey, we're going to discuss, remove the Bible from schools, in a way, you kind of made a prejudice against Christianity. Because in my view, how I see it is, why are you allowed to teach atheism in school, but you're not allowed to teach Christianity? To me, they're both belief systems, right? You made a decision. So imagine if Christians took over and said, hey, you're not allowed to teach atheism and evolutionary biology. What do? You discount that. You've seen that as unimportant. Like, hey, you don't need to learn this. And I think that's what kind of happened to religion in the Bible, right? Atheists said, hey, we need to make it neutral. We're not trying to raise religious zealots. We need to take Bible for school because you need to be Christian in private. To the point where now you got football coaches getting fired because they prayed outside of the school. Like, it's ridiculous, right? So in my way, it's like you push a narrative by omission, by omitting what is not allowed in public life. You kind of exclude it from public life, and that's why I think what happened to the Bible, right? And I think we need to bring back kind of teaching morality again in schools, and I think that's what happened when they removed the Bible out of schools, is they removed the teaching of morality, philosophy in a way. You don't touch these subjects until you get to college, and I think by then, a lot of people's worldviews are already strongly formed by then. And I think we're doing our country a disservice, and we see the results of it, that we don't think about deep questions like that. What makes you an individual? What it means to be part of a community, a nation, a country, you know? Like you don't get these kind of questions until you go into a philosophy class in college. But by then, people are already rooted in their own perceptions and beliefs. So, hey, I digress. Jonathan, I might answer that question at the end of this video. I want to wrap it up, and I'll give you my thoughts about what I mean.
That by definition brought you into this world. What does that mean? What does it mean to be a citizen of this nation? Not some nebulous, vague global citizen fighting climate change. No, but a citizen of this nation, on this land, with these ideals. What does it mean to believe in God, to be a nation under God? I think that's our moment. And I believe that if we fill that void with an actual affirmative vision, we will dilute these other poisons to irrelevance. They are symptoms. They're symptoms of a deeper cancer. That cancer itself is a void, a black hole. Fill that void with an actual affirmative vision of who we really are. That's got to be how we win. And the thing that frustrates me most, actually, about the Republican Party, Tucker, isn't even the neoconism in our foreign policy, and I mean, it frustrates me deeply, but this feels solvable through an alternative set of policies, right? I can go do deals on a global stage, and let's hope I'll be successful if I'm in that seat. I think I will. But this is actually the deeper challenge. You can only stand up with the spine abroad or in an economy or whatever if you at least first know who you really are. And I think that is the far more difficult question. It's not going to happen through policy, but somebody. It doesn't have to be a U.S. president. It could be It could be someone who has a media outlet. It could be a religious figure, but it could be a parent. Maybe it's not one person. Maybe, which is what I think the real answer is going to be. Maybe it's going to have to be leaders in the different spheres of our lives, each stepping up and speaking with conviction to the question of answering who we really are. And I think the U.S. president has a role to play there in answering who we are as Americans. And the thing that really frustrates me back about the Republican Party is, I wrote Woke Inc. a couple of years ago. You were kind enough to help me launch that book with you, and we had a great conversation, and a lot of people read it. And then the Republican Party starts reciting memorized chapter and verses from, not just my book, but maybe others like it, but mine included, but without actually knowing like what they're even talking about.
Yeah, a lot of politicians don't speak with conviction. I think that's the one of the biggest issues that we have in our country today. And I think that's why Vivek is resonating with a lot of people, especially with me, right? And Jonathan asked a question, what does it mean to be an American to you, Kenny? Oh, okay. For me, I think what it means to be an American is to be exceptional, right? Now, colleges don't teach this anymore. They teach you to be ashamed of being an American, right? An American used to mean like, hey, we're leaders. We lead the world, right? We're the city on top of the hill. We're the example, right? And I just think that American exceptionalism, like being exceptional, being striving for your goals, being wealthy, being success based on how you define it, right? Being American is very rooted in individualism, right? The ability that, hey, I control my own fate. I am the master of my ship. I am the captain of my soul. I define my own destiny, and I live in a land of opportunity where I could eventually be anything I want to be as long as I put in the work to be that thing, right? And I think that's the American message that I kind of see. I think that's what it means to be an American, is that you're loyal to your country, right? You want to leave the country better off than how you found it, how you were brought up into it. We as an American, I think in some semblance, we all have this feeling that we want to leave a mark in the world. And I think that's a very American idea. As an American, I believe you don't worship no state, monarchy. You don't worship no king. You only worship God or your principles, right? Benjamin Franklin is a good example of this. His 13 virtues, right? Either there's two types of American. You got the religious one. Hey, my faith in God, and I only serve God, and I do things in accordance to His will. And then you got the other American that's based on principles. Hey, I have these principles. This is how I choose to live my life. This is the American way, and I want to be an example for all my fellow countrymen, right? And I think it's being American, it has to be rooted in nationalism and pride in country, patriotism. I think is a very core root of that. And I think a lot of reasons why people don't know what it means to be American, or don't even want to be proud to be an American or identify as an American, is because of what Vivek counted out here earlier, is that a lot of the schools kind of condition it out of us, right? They tell you how bad America was. America oppressed black people, and at a time it did. But they don't want to tell you how America is also black people's greatest liberator, right? They don't want to tell you the good, the achievements, the great achievements that America have done. They don't want to tell you how America influenced a whole entire culture, influenced the world, how everybody wanted to come here. Everybody still wants to come here from a global perspective, right? We get migrants. We got a big, massive immigration problem, right? Because we were the city on the hill. Everyone wanted to be us, and we knew it. And we were proud of that. And I think we lost sight of that. And I think maybe it can come back, but I guess it depends on how Vivek really pitched this. Trump, it's the same thing. Before Trump ran for president, all the black rappers wanted to be Trump. I want to be rich like Trump, right? He ran as a Republican. Now they all hate him, right on cue, right? And you want to tell me there's no narrative, there's no script that Hollywood has to follow? There's not a message that they're trying to push, right? But I digress, bro. But being American is uniquely striving for ideals, striving for success, whatever that may be for you, right? And I think that's kind of my general whatever. How I believe what being an American really is, bro. But I think it's rooted in love of country, love for your people, and wishing better for the welfare of the country, right? And you tell it straight, you tell it how it is. Hey, you give them the bitter truth because you believe and trust in your fellow Americans that they can handle the truth, as Vivek so kindly articulated. But I digress. Let's finish up this last minute of conversation and let Vivek wrap it up, and then I'll give my final thoughts.
They understand the word, they're uttering the words, but they don't really understand the phenomenon they're addressing, which stops you from actually getting to the true solution, which is actually understanding that there's a deeper void and vacuum that we have to fill with an affirmative alternative vision of our own. That takes courage. That takes vision. That takes some level of imagination of what is actually possible. You don't have to imagine it too much. It's been true for most of our history, so you can maybe just draw from that. That's how I do it. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. Let's maybe just borrow from the people who set this thing into motion. They had a pretty good idea of what they were doing.
Yeah.
But that's what this moment calls for. And either we rise to that occasion and we take that 1776 spring spirit and we channel it into a revival of that once more, or else we will be the Israelites lost in the desert asking to go back and be ruled by the Pharaoh.
That's a good analogy.
Exactly what this nation is. Yeah. Otherwise,
if we don't lead ourselves to the promised land, a dictator, leader, he's going to lead us to his promised land. And usually it benefits only him and the people in his group, right? And that's where America's falling into right now with the World Economic Forum, right? That could be our future, right? Our future could be, oh, we're leaving this. We're just a nation, part of the globalist machine, right? We own nothing. We'll be happy. That could be our future if we mess up this direction that this country's going. If we don't fix what's going on in our culture, that could be the future we hand down to our future generations, right? So,
on a march to actually towards being ruled by, quietly becoming a people of sheep, so our government can be a government of wolves.
That's a perfect analogy.
woo,
Vivek Ramaswamy, thank you very much.
woo, that boy was spitting. I ain't gonna lie to you, bro. I really like that interview. I think that the towards the end it was inspirational, right? I hope you guys like the interview. I know it was a long one, 2-hour stream. My wife's probably mad at me because I told her I'll be done under 2 hours, but I got really into the video. I hope you guys enjoyed what was going on. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the commentary. I really appreciate you guys for showing up to come out. Jonathan Field said he loved my commentary. He said, I love that, Kenny. That was truly beautiful. I'm glad you think so. I know I'm just speaking what I feel on here on the interwebs. Yeah, what else? I don't think I have anything else to do. In regards to the Larry Elder video, I've done a slight reaction to it. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier in the stream. I guess I did. So after the stream, you guys can check it out. It's only an 18-minute video. Probably do more clips of it if, as I shift through the whole entire interview. But I hope you guys enjoyed the commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I appreciate you guys showing up. Don't forget to like the stream on your way out. Guys, I hope you guys have a good weekend. Have a blessed week. And I'll catch you guys on the next live stream. Peace.